welcome to the first episode of the Nerd Chatter podcast. We're your hosts, Don and Garrett.
What's up, everyone?
The show's two nerds sitting down every week to chit-chat about some nerd things. Typically, we're going to go ahead and start off the shows with a nice little segment showcasing some free games that you can find on the internet. This week we have Superland free on the Epic Games Store. That goes until the 23rd of June. Have you ever played Superland?
I have not.
Superland is, if I'm not mistaken, there was a game back in the day. It was called Super Ball. I think you're like jelly characters, and it's kind of in the same headspace as Rocket League. Essentially soccer. You shoot the ball around and try to get around people double jumping and stuff like that. Pretty fun game. But I believe the same studio that made that created Superland, which is kind of a guided open world experience RPG type of a game, but very fun. So I do recommend picking it up free on Epic Games Store until the 23rd of June. And for this first show, I think we have some catching up to do. So we're going to go and have a little bit of a discussion on good old Star Wars. You know, we're children of the 90s. We grew up with Star Wars. We have a lot of fond memories. We had those VHS releases in the late 90s. I think it was 97 or so. What was Star Wars influence for you?
I mean, it was everything. One of my first memories of Star Wars is just watching it on, I think it was TNT with my dad. And that was our thing. So we watched Star Wars together. And then it just became a me thing eventually. But I went to all of the openings for the whole prequels and then the sequels. And I don't know, it's just been such an integrated part of my upbringing and now my adulthood. I am a product of Star Wars. What about you?
For me personally, it was kind of hard to pin down thinking about this. I can't necessarily say if it was watching the original films over and over again. I think I just grew up in the house with the films being around. I know that we had the box set when the films re-released in 97 or so. I remember we got the full screen in VHS. You know, fond memories of video games, and I remember the comic books and trading cards and toys and all that stuff. So, I mean, it was just kind of ingrained. It's just been natural to be a fan of Star Wars. You know, and the prequels specifically, you know, I was going through my high school years. It was like right in my high school years when those films were coming out. So a pretty decent impact for me personally. I think first we should probably talk about what we grew up with, which would be the original trilogy. What's your feeling on the original trilogy compared to all the other trilogies that have come since?
The original trilogy is, I mean, what I grew up with, what will always be considered my favorite trilogy. I mean, it's the perfect set of films in my opinion. You have A New Hope, literally bringing in the hope of freedom from the Empire and tyranny, and then you have the darkness that is Empire Strikes Back and the revelations that are in that. Then you have Return of the Jedi, where the darkness gets destroyed in the end. And it's just such a perfect tale, folklore, mythology, if you will, of what good people can do together.
Yeah. It does have a good message. It's obvious. I mean, that's it for anybody that grew up with it prior to any other films coming out. You know, there was no real murmurs of a prequel. I mean, they did add the Roman numerals, I believe. I think we discussed this. What was it? The early 80s is when he added.
When Empire Strikes Back came out, George Lucas added the Roman numerals. With A New Hope specifically, the TV versions were edited to add in, you know, Roman numeral 4 or episode 4 right after the title of A New Hope. I mean, George Lucas always had the philosophy with the original trilogy of being Saturday afternoons like serials, where you just jump into the action where you're at, and that's what he had envisioned, and that's what he did.
Yeah, and it feels like that too. I mean, with the opening crawl and all that good stuff. I don't know. I think growing up as a kid and just being kind of young through all that, I didn't pay too much attention to the fact that they were numbered. You know, I never referred to them as episode 4, episode 5. It was always like New Hope, Empire, Jedi. So yeah,
I mean,
in the early 90s, I didn't really have that vibe of like, oh, I can't wait till the next Star Wars comes out. You know, you were just in it. You were appreciating it for what it was. And everything that kind of built around it after that, and all the toys, and just kind of how it was kept up, and just kind of social discourse.
I really remember, I mean, I'm a few years younger than you are, but I remember that excitement when the special editions came out. and the announcement of a new Star Wars being in the works.
I mean, naturally, the
Um,
CGI just went over so well.
yeah,
The beautiful changes that they made to those films. I really wish I could track down the
yes.
originals and watch those again. I'm sure there's a way, but it's probably not legal.
We will not talk about that
Yeah,
for obvious reasons.
yeah, just Disney Plus, ladies and gentlemen. Um,
Yes.
but when it comes to those original films, you had a very particular vibe. It just
Yeah.
felt like its own thing. It didn't feel like this gigantic machine, all consuming and infallible. We grew up with the original trilogy and appreciated it for what it was, and it didn't feel dated because of the type of film that it was, but we appreciated it, that it was original and fresh, even so many years later.
With Star Wars, it's always Star Wars: A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. It's always been such an original story and concept overall of
The culmination
the
of different themes, the
exactly,
samurai, the knights, the mystical aspect of it, and the sorcery, essentially. Yeah, it's a
exactly.
beautiful
And
combination.
George Lucas pioneered so many different special effects and
Well, ILM
early
today is
computer effects.
epic.
Exactly. He and his companies pioneered all of that. So, Return of the Jedi still holds up
Mhm.
to a lot of special effects as like the gold standard of what to do. Just because they did it so well in the pioneering stage. And most movies in the 70s and 80s didn't look anywhere near what Star Wars looked like.
Yeah,
It was just so good for what the time brought.
and Star Trek was bopping around, obviously, and it had its own appeal, and just having a general understanding of the two worlds, how different they were. That you have that grunginess combined with that very mystical and beautiful art style that's in Star Wars, but
Well, and
Star
I
Trek was
think
always that polished future of perfection.
yeah, and with Star Wars, in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago, like we have that as our backdrop. That this was who knows how long ago, and everything feels well used. And if you look at any of the things in Star Wars, they look used and abused. While in Star Trek, everything's new and pristine, shiny.
Hmm.
I don't know. There's that hope of a future where humans don't destroy everything.
Yeah,
That's what the driving factors are there.
they're not horrible, but in Star Wars, there's definitely that underlying grunge and looming threat of the totalitarian state, with the Empire. And I think the prequels did a pretty decent job, even though that people have mixed reviews. What's your thoughts about the prequels?
I mean,
Okay, let's hold on. Let's go
prequels.
back first, and let's say what
Okay.
what is your favorite movie from the original trilogy before we continue. You know, let's establish what our favorite films were.
My favorite movie from the original trilogy has to be Return of the Jedi.
Mhm.
I would rate it at a 96, and Empire Strike Back is a 95. New Hope is a 94. Like there's just the few things that really edge out, for at least for me, Return of the Jedi versus Empire Strikes Back. It's Vader being redeemed and how he was such a good villain, and it was only his son and his son's ultimate sacrifice that he was willing to make for his dad that saved Vader. That
Mhm.
really resonated with me. So that movie just draws me in every time. I love the Endor sequence where you have fighting on three tiers. You have Luke, Vader, and the Emperor in the Death Star. You have the space battle going around the Death Star. Then you have the battle on Endor, where you have the little teddy bears killing everyone and
Yeah.
just going
Mm-hmm.
ham. And it's just such a tense battle. Like there's a swing between the rebellion's gonna get through, they're gonna win, then there's that pendulum comes back around, the empire's gonna win, and eventually the rebellion does win. And it's just such a satisfying way to round off that movie. I love it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I'd say mine's is Empire. I like snow speeders.
That's it? That's all you
That's
like?
pretty much it. I like snow speeders. They're pretty cool. I think just the overall, like, just the tone of Empire, just the it's a bit melancholy, it's a bit somber.
Mm-hmm.
I like that shift in it took the task seriously. It knew how to
Yeah,
establish the weight of the third film, after not expecting to make the second film when New Hope was made.
yeah,
They picked up the ball and ran with it really well, which is what I have an issue with the new sequel trilogy. But we'll get to that. But yeah, it's Empire for sure. We were talking about the prequels and how they conveyed certain messages. How do you feel about the prequels?
I mean, for me, prequels is what I truly grew up on. I mean, and what I remember the most. I mean, I'm a couple years younger than you are, so I really dived into the prequels because I saw them in theaters. I had that perfect nostalgia, and I mean, I collected all of the action figures for Episode One. I had Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, Darth Maul. I had some battle droids. Then when Episode 2 came out, I started collecting clone troopers, and that was my thing. I don't know. I just connected with the Anakin, him growing up. I mean, I was about Anakin's age. Well, I guess a little older than Anakin was when it came out, and then I kind of grew up with it. And when Attack of the Clones came out, I mean, Anakin was a little bit older than me, but I still related to Anakin for a lot of things. And I don't know. The whole story of the prequels is a little bit more shiny and put together than like the general aesthetic of the original trilogy. I feel like the story for me, the prequels really comes down to Revenge of the Sith, where we see what the hope of the Jedi was Anakin, the chosen one, really just turning on the Order. And I mean, they don't know that in what 19 or I guess it would be 23 years, 24 years down the road, Anakin and Vader will come back to the light side and really will end off the Sith as we know them, kind of. But he at least gets that process started. I don't know. I just feel like that movie was so well done. The lightsaber fighting in that movie is
It's the best. It's
perfection.
the best yeah, for sure,
Yeah. I mean,
100%.
peak of Star Wars lightsaber fighting is Episode 3.
In epic fashion. Like
Yes.
he went a little overboard, to be honest. It was probably just a little bit too much, but I distinctly remember the clips and the behind the scenes footage of them like just going crazy on choreography like for hours and
Hmm.
hours and hours and hours. And I just recently rewatched that entire prequel trilogy, and the lightsaber fights are just so much crisper. And I think that's my personal issue with the new, I guess even the original trilogy and the new sequel trilogy, is that you're dealing with people that are not properly trained. Every single character that you've seen, wield a lightsaber that's been out of the original prequels has been kind of just a basic individual that's trying to stitch together, this way of the Jedi type thing, right? Even Luke, to a certain
Yeah.
extent, wasn't properly trained. He didn't go through the youngling training that the original Jedi's did in the Old Republic. The prequels, to me, in terms of the tone, I think that's what I want the most from Star Wars, and I think that's why I'm a little bit frustrated with Star Wars in general, because they won't give it to me. I want your mystical Jedi. I want the Old Republic. I want the structure. I want that religion aspect of it, because that's what I liked from the prequels. Yeah, you have the goofy characters and stuff like that, but that was George, and not everybody agreed with it even when they were making the film, and he's made comments where he might have made some mistakes. So take it with a grain of salt. However, it was still George telling a story, and it felt like it was expanding on what was already established, even if it was a little too shiny and a bit goofy. Jar Jar was a mistake. If he was going to be the secret Sith that was behind it all, then that would have been, I guess, redeemable. But it
Yeah.
wasn't.
Well, I mean,
He is responsible for pretty much everything that's wrong. At the end of those movies, dumbass.
yeah. I mean, with Jar Jar though, George always wanted some type of comedic relief. In the original trilogy, it was R2D2 and C3PO. I mean, we have those characters in the prequels. I don't know why George just didn't stick with that, but felt like he needed to add Jar Jar. I mean, Jar Jar pushes along the plot for sure, and what the story is for especially episode 1. But could he have done it other ways? Sure. And is it wrong or right? I mean, that's your own opinion.
They weren't void of criticisms at the time. They didn't skimp away from being ridiculed a bit. They got their fair share.
I mean, they got ridiculed a lot, and I mean, the actors faced it a lot too, and that's really a shame because, I mean, Ewan McGregor said recently that he felt outcasted for such a long time because of the way that critics and the general or the people that had the voice that in the early 2000s were talking about the movies. And I mean, we may have been able to get an Obi-Wan series or more stories with Ewan and Hayden together in the past. Maybe we could have had a live-action Clone Wars instead of an animated one, because maybe they would have been willing to be there for that. And it's just a shame that it's taken, almost 20 years for them to feel okay with the fandom, because that's where they're at right now.
I'm not even sure if it's that, to be honest. Like, because I don't think there is a way to be okay with the fandom. In this particular situation, like the fandoms, whether it be Star Wars, Marvel, DC, even Harry Potter, they've been kind of turned upside down by this aggressive conversation online, which I keep track of a little bit more than you. You're not necessarily a Twitter goer. Neither am I, but setting up everything for the show, you do kind of tune into these conversations, and there's some very aggressive and unrealistic arguments that are bopping around. A lot of blanks being filled in, a lot of assumption that's being kind of hoisted as fact, and a lot more hanging on desperately to the decisions that Disney makes, in particular to what they can retain of their lore.
Yeah. Well, and along those lines, I feel like there's also especially, I don't know if it's just especially with Star Wars, but people hang on to what they want and really let go of what they want and are a little more, and try to be more receptive. I mean, with the Obi-Wan series that's going on right now, we see that a lot of people are wanting to be hand-fed things in the moment and not let things pay off as the series comes out.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk, I mean, especially with the Grand Inquisitor stuff. There's people want to be hand-fed what they want and not necessarily let the story be told to them. And I feel like that is a disservice to themselves. That's my opinion. And I wish it wasn't the fact, because I think people would find more enjoyment in these stories that, I mean, they're not perfect by any means, but they would find more enjoyment in them, you know?
You can like the prequels, you can hate the prequels, you can be whatever about them, but it still felt like there was a story being told, and it felt like you were being tapped into the like the ass end of an even broader scale of lore that you can tap into. That the Jedi Council and just kind of how that whole thing works, and drama type Jedi series that takes place in the Old Republic. Perfect.
They were talking about that. They even tapped the creators of the Game of Thrones series from HBO to do that, but then they got tied up, I think, with a big Netflix contract. So that was going to be the case, and that is no longer, which is really unfortunate, because there's so much opportunity to go back in time.
So many right cool characters, like just so many cool, dope characters, whether it be Jedi or Sith, cool designs, cool backstories, a lot darker, more manipulative, there is potential.
Exactly. I know you've played the Star Wars MMO, the Old Republic. I have too. I mean, whenever I think about going back in time in Star Wars, I imagine the cinematics from the Old Republic, where you have hundreds of Sith and hundreds of Jedi and troopers from both sides just going at it in open warfare. I want that. I don't
Yeah,
know about you.
that's the war that I keep thinking of. That's the war I feel. It's like, yeah, you get that from the prequels. You get that grand scale of battle.
Yeah,
Even if it is on Naboo and it's a bunch of weird sea creatures fighting robots, there's still that feeling of there's a war going down everywhere, and you get a lot of that from Episode 3 in particular because Order 66. You get so many different environments that these characters are in when they're killed.
yeah,
That you see how widespread this fight is and how active it is. There is an attention to detail to the actual wars of the Star Wars series, which is something that you don't. All you get from the new trilogy is, there's the bad guys are back and they're gonna snuff out those good guys, and here's that tale, and it's like, eh. And then you get the injection of new Jedi and stuff like that. But me personally, I want that old Republic. I want that shiny, tall pillar Jedi Council vibe that you get. The sitting around in the chambers and meditating and training and stuff like that. Um, I want other things. I don't want just the Skywalker storyline. But Disney's got to make
agreed,
their money back, and then tenfold. So they're in the process of doing that. So as far as the
agreed.
prequels go, I'm like you. I grew up with them. I remember the campaign. In my hallway, I have framed USPS stamps from Episode 3, I think it is. Um, I love them. I didn't really. I wasn't too critical of them because I think I was just too young. I didn't think that it was as bad as they were. Looking back, you can definitely see that there's some even dated imagery at that time, where it's like I think a lot of people just didn't like Jar Jar just because he was so CGI heavy.
I mean, I'm totally right there with you. As a kid, the reception of the prequels, I mean, I completely loved them. I mean, my opinion of them hasn't really changed over time, other than there's minor criticisms like Jar Jar, his whole character, perfect example, CGI, and everything about his backstory, his integration into the main story, everything about Jar Jar.
Hmm.
Problem. However, there's just other things about the prequels that are still good, and
It's a warm and
I don't know.
fuzzy. You get a little bit of a warm and fuzzy feel when you watch them, and I don't
Yeah,
I don't get that from the new trilogy.
no,
But you do get a warm and fuzzy from it, and again, I think that goes back to George being the one that's putting this together because there's still that heart to it. There's still a story being told.
yeah, and I mean with George, it was his vision through all three movies. It was for better or for worse his direction, and
Yes.
I mean in the original trilogy there was people to say no to him, and the prequels he just did whatever he wanted for better or for worse.
Yeah, he went ham. The original
Yeah,
trilogy, I distinctly remember the scenes that were cut. Bucket hat wearing Luke.
yeah,
Running around in the desert. Just a completely different feel. And his wife at the time definitely saved it, along with the editing. Uh, it made it what it was, and yeah, he was off the rails with the prequels for sure.
yeah,
But it was still his
um,
story being told, and it set up so much
exactly.
more that could be tapped into. Without those prequels, you wouldn't have anything that's relevant in the new trilogy or anything that came after the new trilogy, like the video games and the side projects like Clone Wars and stuff like that. It's all based on what George established before he dipped.
Yep,
Um, so I think they deserve their respect.
totally. What's your favorite prequel movie?
So me in particular, I graduated in 2005, and um, I distinctly remember we had like grad night the night before, and the next morning, I mean, we got back to school like at 6 o'clock in the morning. First show, first showing for episode 3, first day of release was I think 10:25, 10:30 in the morning. So went home, got a couple hours of sleep, went to the movie theater, and it was like my entire graduating class. There was like double digit number of lightsabers in the crowd. The guy at the projector booth was like screaming at everybody to get him out. So one guy had to take them all out to the car, which was pretty funny. And then I got to watch that film with pretty much the entirety of my graduating class and enjoy it. So it was like an epic moment. It was like a once in a lifetime type of lineup of scenarios, you know? It's like had a great night the night before, you're low on sleep, but you're amped on adrenaline with all your homies and you're just watching this film. The opening scene of episode 3 is pretty epic, you know, and for its
Yeah.
time it was so aggressive and it's like, okay, you're gonna get the Jedi, you know. And it was pretty good. Now there is corny lines that are delivered and some decisions that are kind of like frustrating by certain characters, but um, you know, I think it's definitely my favorite out of all of them. I mean, it's definitely my favorite out of the three. My second would be episode one, which I think a lot of people would be, uh, you know, the exact opposite opinion. Is probably their least favorite movie of all of them is episode one. But I really like Qui-Gon Jinn. I like the vibe that he gives off in terms of the old ways of the Jedi and that
Well,
structure.
I don't think Qui-Gon even represents the old style Jedi. From what we know from Clone Wars and all of the other content, he really represents being one with the Force. I feel like where he's in tune with the Force. He's what the Jedi were supposed to be. I mean, in the prequels, we see the Jedi really lose their way. They become generals and armies, and instead of being truly peacekeepers of what they're intended to be. And I think Qui-Gon really represents what the Jedi should be, but what the rest of the Jedi, including the whole Council, Yoda, Obi-Wan, were falling away from. I mean, Obi-Wan does keep a lot of Qui-Gon-ness to him because he is his master. Of course, he's going to keep have that essence. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know. I think just the way that the character was presented was just done in such a way that it opened the door for a different type of character to like in the world of Star Wars. Yeah, you get like Mace Windu and you get Yoda and Yaddle chilling around in the Jedi Council and talking about what you should and shouldn't do. But um, to see like Qui Gon out there and just kind of like in these tense situations, guiding Obi Wan to make the right decisions and just completely, you know, in control of what's going on. Like, yeah, he got sliced up, but you know, it led to more story building on top of that, and Anakin being taken in by Obi Wan. Still solid storytelling that's going on behind all this goofy shit, you know. So
Yep,
overall, I
agreed.
just think that that feeling that was established in the prequels, uh, yeah, it's representative of our youth and what George turned the series into. But kind of a weird position where it's like I said, we grew up with the original films, you know, the unedited, non CGI films, and we were introduced with this new approach to it, and we took it differently than the current generation does with the new sequel trilogy. What's your favorite film for the originals or the prequels?
Oh, Revenge of the Sith. I do like Attack of the Clones more than the Phantom Menace, but I mean, it depends on the week. Sometimes I have like a lot of nostalgia for Phantom Menace, and then I'll change to Attack of the Clones. So it's a toss up between them, but Revenge of the Sith definitely beats it out. Like I said, that seeing everything play out and setting up the original trilogy the way that it did, I feel there's no better thing. And again, the lightsaber fighting in that movie is just spectacular.
It's better than any film. I mean, to be honest, combine all of the other films, and it's like half as good as the choreography in Episode 3.
Yep.
And he did go a little crazy with it, but it was solid.
Well, and I
Very
mean,
fun.
with especially the Anakin versus Obi-Wan, I mean, these are two Jedi. Well, I mean, Jedi and a Sith at that point, really, where they're both at their peak of their game. They've both been in countless lightsaber battles at that point between Count Dooku a couple times and everything that we see eventually in the Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
They are experienced. They know each other. They duel each other as training, and we see that in a flashback from Obi-Wan. They know each other's moves, and so they're going to be going 150% all the time in that battle because they know what's going to happen, and they have to try to break the other's defense. And the only way they do that is just go more than they could possibly do on their
just
own.
go crazy. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I feel like the craziness and the over the headness of the lightsaber battles in episode 3 are justified because of that reason.
I do also have like a guilty pleasure in watching Anakin turn evil.
I mean, yeah.
And it's not because he becomes Vader. It's just for some reason I it's like the most satisfying ending for that character. You know, it's tragic, what have you, but it's still the most gratifying outcome. It's like, yeah, he's going in there and he's slicing up younglings and shit, but to see him just kind of go unhinged, how he did the transformation, is a bit hokey. I mean, I just, like I said, I just watched the prequel trilogy, and he makes the decision in the moment to chop off Mace Windu's hand because of pure selfishness. It wasn't because he wanted to take him in for a trial. He saw the room filled with a bunch of dead Jedi, this dude shooting lightning out of his hands, and he does say, I need him. It's a conscious decision to go, but it was so kind of flippant after that. He's just like willing to go and like murder a bunch of people and do all this. I get it's in a necessity where he needs to kind of soak in the evil and the ways of the dark side so that he can have the power to save Padme. But all in all, I just think that it's just a gratifying ending to that story arc.
Agreed. I think for me, the other aspect of this, especially when you watch Clone Wars in addition to episodes 2 and 3, Palpatine is grooming Anakin literally from episode 1, and it sets up this gradual. I mean, have you heard of the analogy of if you put a frog into boiling water,
throw them in a pot of boiling water, they'll hop out. But if you increase the heat gradually, they'll yeah. I got you.
And I think that's what we see with Anakin. Like Palpatine didn't just like come out of the door. I'm like, hey, I'm a Sith Lord. Like, hey, I have this power to save the one that you love. It was, hey, like we've built up a lot of trust. I'm your mentor. Have you ever heard of the story of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, there is a bit of a whiplash effect in the films because you do hop a big chunk of time twice. And Clone Wars is a bit of a requirement to get the full feeling of it. Now, me personally, my experience of the alternate media from the films is played a lot of the games, read a couple of the comic books when I was a kid, but don't remember.
I mean, those aren't even canon anymore.
Yeah,
so.
I know, but a lot. I did watch the Clone Wars, but that wasn't too long ago, probably about 2 years ago, and I don't think I finished the entire series. I think I got to like the last season and then got caught up with stuff.
Yeah.
So you're gonna be the one who definitely can pull those references and correct my mistakes. But
of course,
even with what I watched. There is a lot of story being told outside of the films that helps receive the information that the films are giving you better. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you should dip every opportunity that you get, and they are double dipping, triple dipping, quadruple dipping. They're sucking the Skywalker saga dry for everything they can get out of it. And I'm not, I understand. And I think that's why I like the prequels, is because it's more of the story being told rather than trying to extract more story out of something already there. So me personally, I do like the prequels, not hating on it too much. I think anybody that grew up in the 90s, you kind of took what you got and enjoyed it.
I mean, I completely agree with that sentiment. Prequels will always have a special place in my heart just because that was the new exciting thing coming out. When I was a kid and a teenager,
And we loved it. What about the sequels?
Oh, God. Well, episode 7 was okay.
I I think it was fine.
It was fine. If it wasn't such a direct knock off of A New Hope, I would have a lot more. I'd be a lot more receptive to it than I am. However, it's very much like A New Hope. There's all of the tropes that you find in A New Hope. You find a direct correlation into The Force Awakens,
Yeah, it's like
which
poetry. It rhymes, you know.
yeah, okay, George Lucas,
I'm just saying,
but
you know, it could play off that way. They could have got away with it. It's fine, you know. It's like, oh, she's kind of taken a similar path to Luke, you know. It's they could have worked with it. It was fine, you know. It wasn't bad. It wasn't good. It was just kind of there, and
yeah,
a perfect foundation.
but the sequels in general, I felt like it. The storytelling wasn't there. The cinematography was freaking epic, though. And that's why I like, or that's what I like about the sequels. You have the apocalypse style, or apocalypse now style, like sunset shot of TIE fighters. You just have all these epic shots,
Hmm.
but the story for me isn't cohesive and it's kind of herky jerky. You go
Hmm.
from J.J. Abrams' vision to Ryan Johnson's vision, back to J.J. Abrams' vision that he has to piece together from what he was given from Ryan. So I like I said, I just felt like it feels herky jerky. I feel like the people that wrote, I feel like J.J. Abrams, if he would have had complete control of the vision of the sequels, it could have gone a lot better than it did. I don't know on what percentage scale I would rate them at, but if that was the case, but what we got, I mean, I don't feel like Ryan Johnson understood Luke Skywalker. I feel we know Luke from the original trilogy as this hope of what the Jedi are going to be like. And we see him in The Last Jedi as this who literally just falls apart. And it's just so sad because that's what, I mean, we both grew up on is Luke saved his dad and Luke is the future of the Jedi. And especially in like with Legends content, Luke had this, I mean, he recreated the Jedi Order into something better than it was in the Old Republic and in the Republic. And then we see complete disintegration of Luke, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, my thing with the first film of the trilogy, like I said, it had a good establishing base for where to go from there. It was a pretty solid rip of A New Hope, but it had everything that you needed. The characters were delivered in a fairly likable way, um, at least a way that could be utilized. Um, the imagery was very nice in that film. The slight callbacks, you know, you got the Millennium Falcon and its influence and just the lore in general, and you know the imagery they pulled. I think it a pretty decent performance by Harrison Ford. You know, to see him and Chewie together is always funny, and Han Solo was a very witty character. He wasn't cracking jokes. He wasn't saying your mama jokes. He wasn't, you know, farting and burping and all that stuff. It was a confident character that really didn't want to take anything from anybody, and he let people know it, you know. And it was a snappy wittiness that, you know, you wanted to hate him, but at the same time you really liked his style, and that was the balance. That's why you like these characters. But the first film, it was very kind of just whatever. It wasn't necessarily intended. It was intended to introduce Star Wars to another generation, and hopefully piggyback off of what they had just purchased. You
Yep.
know, which was a very established IP that have been around for decades and have had fans that have grown up with it and had their own kids and have been showing their kids these films, and you know they wanted to capitalize off of it, and you want to give people what you know they're gonna like, and the Skywalker saga is definitely that. I think that the biggest issue with the new trilogy is that the lack of planning. You know, it was somewhat of a hubris approach to it, being so confident that, you know, just because you're Disney, that you'll be able to just kind of fumble your way through it and deliver a product that these people would like, and to a certain extent they did, because I do think they had a general understanding of the level of a certain level of fanaticism that they could utilize to kind of make sure that they have this community built around the products that they're making. Um, you see a D23 convention, or you see, Star Wars, what is it? Star Wars Celebration,
Yeah.
um, May 4th. You see these, and you do see a significant number of individuals that pretty deep into that fandom, where it's not very hard to find YouTube videos of people that go to Galaxy's Edge 3-4 times a week, where it passes the level of of just basic enjoying of a film and a story being told, and it turns into an identity, and something more. And I think the clash between people that just want to see like good films and the people that will defend these films regardless of who makes them and who produces them, just because it is Star Wars, that divide has definitely led to a different take on the social interaction around the community, and it is kind of driven a wedge down the middle. Me personally, I mean, I know you are definitely a fan. Me, I mean, I think I would consider myself just like a standard fan that likes to look into it a little bit deeper.
Hmm.
Finding the time to watch multiple seasons of a TV show, or rewatch the films over and over and over again. That's not really in my wheelhouse these days, having kid and family and that type of thing. But, I do enjoy knowing more about these characters and being able to keep up with the conversation. But I think there's, I think there is that extra level where it's taken a bit too far, because my general criticisms with the sequel trilogy is that, you know, Ryan Johnson, that film, it's it's not that great. I'm sorry.
No.
I literally just finished it about an hour ago. I watched it again. Like I said, I watched the prequels, and I did watch The Force Awakens, and The Last Jedi just now. And in all honesty, and somebody who was willing to absorb anything that was Star Wars, it's a bit of an obnoxious film. It is quite patronizing. It's sacrificing characters left and right, and not just their lives, but um, their image, their influence on the story, the confidence that the viewer has in those characters, the likability. Poe was completely destroyed as a character, and somebody that you would want to admire and buy toys of and stuff. They pretty much sacrificed that character. The injection of Rose, not even coming close to talking about any of the stupid crap that's on the internet in regards to the racism and the prejudice and yada yada yada. As a character that's written and injected into that film for the purpose that the character was written for, is dumb. Very
Yep.
annoying, very distracting, and the sacrifice at the end of the film was so bad. I that movie, it's very frustrating to watch, because you could tell that there was passion put into it, and there's tons of people that did fantastic work. There was practical props that were fun to see, and there's some situational humor that fit, but there was a lot of just not understanding Star Wars. And like and I don't say that in the sense where I'm an individual, like like I said, well, I'm not an individual that has memorized every page on Wikipedia and read every novel and know every ins and outs of all these side characters and the references that they're making and stuff. Sometimes I do got to go in there and dig to find out. Oh, okay. Um, but as a film, as somebody who enjoys following this story, there was a whole lot of self-sacrifice by Star Wars in that film, and those decisions were made by Ryan Johnson. And I can
Yep.
understand people that would like those films. However, from a pace perspective, the respect for the characters and the long history of Star Wars, and really understanding what the majority of the fan base would actually really like, and instead utilizing it as a vessel for them to talk about whatever social issues they want to talk about, or inject filler, like the whole Canto Bite scene and all of that
Hmm.
goofiness that's going on in that. It's just it's really hard to watch, and I need to watch the final film. I need to get on that. I'm probably gonna do that after we're done recording, just so that I can round off my opinion. But the whiplash, the tonal whiplash of these last three films were a bit inappropriate, in my opinion.
I
Like I
agree.
said, there's
Like I
certain
said,
parts of it that you can like. That's fine, but from a perspective of somebody who grew up with it and respects the story that was being told, it was a bit pretentious.
yeah, like I said, I just felt like they're herky jerky in the storytelling. There wasn't a singular vision like what we had with the original trilogy, prequel trilogy, Clone Wars, even of George's vision going and arcing through the three. It wasn't a smooth arc. It was lightning bolts of here and there, and it was just so piecemeal together due to just the writing differences between JJ and Ryan, then the storytelling and their individual visions for what they wanted their movies to be and what the characters were. Like I said, The Force Awakens is good. It's serviceable. I can watch it. I enjoy watching it on occasion, but I mean, I haven't seen The Last Jedi and I don't know since we bought it on Blu-ray.
Watch it again.
Maybe one other time, and the same thing with Rise of Skywalker. I haven't seen it since we bought it on Blu-ray. I just feel, well, I mean, there's so many missed opportunities that they could have, should have done. They could have brought in a lot of really awesome Legends material, but bringing back Palpatine, I feel like they should have just left Snoke be a new character and not a puppet for Palpatine. I felt like that was a mistake. I mean,
The Last
they
Jedi
didn't
felt
resonate
like
with
it,
me.
it didn't feel like they were going anywhere with it. It felt like they were ending it, and even a
Yeah.
lot of talk about ending this and ending that, let this die, yada yada.
It is the same fight that took place on the original trilogy.
Yeah.
30 years of peace and canon, and
Hmm.
everything's taken away again?
Well, and that's commented
No.
on in the Last Jedi as well, and that's I think the pretentious aspect that I'm referring to with that particular film is that a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the writing, a lot of the message, quote unquote, that's being delivered to the fans is about the fans. You have these previous films that were really heavy on like the Bush administration and just American government, war, that type of thing. The original films were just a culmination of different themes that he was trying to make a world out of, and
Yeah.
a commentary general on what was going on at the time. Um, these new films, they feel like they're commenting on what you as a Star Wars fan should and shouldn't feel, why things that you believe are wrong, and why you should change what you think. And I think that is the patronizing and pretentious aspect of the Last Jedi that I keep getting. There are certain aspects that are fun, fun and happy and that type of thing that you pull those emotions out of, but you would hope so. It's Star Wars, but at the same time, you want that story. You want does the new trilogy feel like an episodic, weekly serial?
No. I don't think so. I feel like because they're so different from each other. I mean, granted, the feel of the original trilogy, each individual movie, they have their own feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the overarching feel and vision that we get from George that there's not that feel to them. They feel like individual movies that, for better or for worse,
You're popping
have
into a
Star
story.
Wars.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a
And
wide scale story, where you don't necessarily need to tag along every second. And I think my issue
yeah.
with Ryan Johnson's decision with The Last Jedi is that, I mean, we're talking about, we pick up right where it left off. We're not talking about hopping 4 years in the future, 2 years into the future, 6 months into the future. Literally, she is handing him the lightsaber, and then it picks up right where it left off and shifts the tone of everything that was leading up to the end of The Force Awakens. So I think
Yep.
that's my issue with Ryan Johnson's storytelling and decisions. As the person that was responsible for continuing the story, he neglected the fact that none of the Star Wars films picked up right where it left off. And because of that, it doesn't feel like it belongs in that same headspace of a weekly serial that made Star Wars what it was originally.
Yeah. I mean, the I think the closest we really have beyond that would be the 6 month gap in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. I think that's the closest gap between the rest of the movies, because there's years that go in between. What is it, like 10 years in between Phantom Menace Episode 2?
Yeah,
There's 3 years in between
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Then 3 and 4 is 19 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then I think there's a year or two in between A New Hope and Empire. I'm probably wrong on that. It might be more, it might be less.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a short period of time where they have to pick up everything and go to Tatooine, plan for their jailbreak of Han, essentially. And
Luke's a
so
master.
it's
Luke's
what?
he's already Master Luke by that point, you know? Like
Yeah,
he is supposed to be pinnacle Luke by that point when he walks into Jabba's palace. And you know, you're just kind of left to be like, "Oh, I guess he went and he trained and he became a Jedi," you know? And
yeah,
you know, we're tapping into a little bit more of that, and it's, you know, whether that's good or bad, that's up for anybody's interpretation, but um, there has always been the gap that you jump, and it has always felt like you are kind of hopping into the story. And me personally, and again, I'm sure that, you know, people are going to get outraged, and you know, it's my opinion. Somebody who just kind of has always enjoyed these films since I remember watching films. The conscious decision to negate that jump in time turned the way that the story was being told. And it no longer felt like I was watching Star Wars. It felt like I was watching long story of somebody that they were trying to like squeeze into the lore. And you couldn't skip a beat, you know, because
yep,
you know you gotta see what happens, you know, right after she hands him the lightsaber, and it's like what he decided to do with it after that was just so hokey. Like, watch that film again, watch the way Luke acts in like the first act of that film. The joking and the attempts at jokes and stuff, they're not witty, they're
no,
very,
it's just spiteful.
yeah, it is, it has an underlying tone of spite for
Yeah,
the fandom.
to be completely honest, I'd rather go throw up.
But my general issue with it is that I think prior to that, I think most people were kind of whatever about the Force Awakens, and Ryan Johnson's decisions to antagonize a big portion of the fan base intentionally has left a scar on the entire fandom of Star Wars, and that
Yeah.
divide has it's there, and I don't think there's a way to get it back together, you know. And it was intentional, and that's the issue, is that he was intentionally antagonizing with, you know, Twitter images and videos, and you know, you think you know Star Wars but you don't,
Yeah.
from somebody that immediately picks up where somebody else left their story, you know, and
Yeah.
a general lack of understanding for how the stories are told by somebody who feels that they know better than you. And you know, I'm not a writer, I'm not a director, but to have, you know, Looper be your film and then be like, okay, well, I know Star Wars. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, you know, like, you're supposed to be a person that understands like the feeling of the fandom and what people really want from it. You shouldn't be
Hmm.
here to change what people want from it. And I think
Well,
the
exactly.
decisions he made were poor.
Yeah. Well, and I remember coming out of the theater of The Force Awakens being so excited to see Luke again after not seeing Luke at all in The Force Awakens until that last scene. You know, you're climbing up the steps and you see Luke there, and he just looks longingly almost at Rey and the lightsaber.
I do think it's a bit hokey.
And
The
well,
the body mannerisms that he has when he takes off his hood is a bit hokey.
yeah,
It's
but
very like, oh, you know, like he does it to himself. It's not
well,
like the music
I
swells
know.
like to give you that vibe. It's like he like lifts his hood off and he
But
holds his arms out and slowly lowers them. It's like, relax, chill out.
I think I don't know. I just felt like we're gonna have this grand adventure with Luke again, and we're gonna see him as Master Jedi, Luke Skywalker, stronger than we've ever seen him in any other material, and he's gonna be this great Jedi. And literally, first second in The Last Jedi, he just throws the lightsaber over his shoulder and basically is a big fu to the whole fandom and
Mm-hmm.
what people were hoping and expecting and thirsty for and hungry for, you know?
Yeah, I think that's where that whole the quote, it bopping around in YouTube videos, the subversion of expectations and yada yada.
And
Whatever.
yeah,
Whatever. It doesn't need to be a subversion of expectations. Sometimes it just
no,
needs to be Star Wars, and you get what you want. The reason you watched the prequels was because you knew it was a story about Anakin becoming Darth Vader. It is
yep,
what it is. That's
yep.
all it was.
The
What about the third
sequels.
film? What about the third film? Let's not talk about the
Okay,
prequels because
okay,
that
okay.
was our youth. But let's
Yeah,
talk about the third film.
okay. Third film, Rise of Skywalker. I feel honestly sad for J.J. Abrams for having to pick up the pieces.
Mhm.
I feel like he was given crap on a platter and he had to polish it to make it presentable. And I don't think there was a way out. Actually, there's one other thing that I feel like we need to talk about with The Last Jedi. Carrie died in post production,
Mhm.
broke everyone's heart,
Mhm.
and they did a whole bunch of editing and they delayed that film from coming out to make changes. And they saved some of the film from The Last Jedi to be used in Rise of Skywalker. I felt like that is a complete mistake. They should have, when she went out um,
The window.
the bridge
Yeah.
of the ship, that would have been the perfect
What are you talking about, bro? The
encapsulation
Mary
of
Poppins
her.
scene is obviously the best scene of that movie.
I mean, no, it's not. But like, it would have been such. I don't know. I just feel like Carrie was just dishonored by them forcing the character to live into the next movie when they didn't have a lot of material to carry through.
Yeah.
So I just needed to say that like that.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was a
They had the
disservice to a
perfect
certain extent.
opportunity, the perfect out, and imagine like the impact that would have had on Kylo. It would have been that in itself. I feel like I would be a lot more pleasant towards The Last Jedi, but like I said, they were editing the film because Carrie died, and they didn't choose to just take her out then.
I
Like,
mean, it
complete mistake.
it had already felt when Luke and Leia meet for the last time. It had already felt like the movie should have ended just because of the way he handled that portion of the third act. It's like we had two endings. You have the space battle
Yeah,
and their escape, and they go right to somewhere where they start another battle, and it's like, okay. I mean, yeah, the imagery is cool. Um, the salt line is absurd. I just saw that like an hour or so ago,
yeah.
where he just the pans on the guy. He deliberately tastes the ground and just says salt,
Yep.
like it was necessary. Like it was something that you needed to know. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
they just wanted to explain why the ground was red and that there was an overlaying layer of white so that it looked cool, and that you had the impression that when Luke got blasted to hell that was body parts and blood being splattered around. But it wasn't, because they could play it off that it was just the surface and yada yada. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I
Anyways.
agree with the Carrie Fisher to a certain extent. I think that even if it wasn't the bridge scene, they shouldn't have just kept going with it. They should have done something to end the character in that film, and then maybe rewrite how Luke ends. Like maybe he's just
Yeah.
weakened and he's left on the island and he can't do anything except share his knowledge, like Yoda.
Yeah. Like I said, I feel like it's a dishonor to Carrie Fisher to have it be the way it did.
Yeah,
And I mean, so many disappointments with The Last Jedi, and then again, I feel sorry for J.J. Abrams from having to pick up the pieces and
yeah.
having to scrape together bits for Leia and
I do
how
think that
to,
the story they came up with was a little bit messy. And
yeah,
then obviously, I think all the general criticisms. I mean, we're obviously a little late to this party, and all the
yeah,
general criticisms have been stated. Um,
yep. But
the pacing was an issue, heavy whiplash, very ticking clock. You have a ticking clock element in the Force Awakens, or I'm sorry, the Last Jedi as well, with the fuel in the spaceships being the most, dramatic thing that you can deal with in this film.
Yeah, so I just want to comment about the fuel situation in The Last Jedi, just because you brought it up. Where else in canon in Star Wars have we seen fuel be a legitimate issue? Nowhere. And now it's an issue? Like, I don't know. That just felt out of place
I was thinking
to
about
me.
it when I was watching it, and it's like, well, I do see, TIE fighters and X-Wings and stuff. They're doing
Like, getting
something. They're
fueled.
doing something. Yeah, I don't know if they're getting like oxygen or if they're getting something. They're getting fueled up with something. So I was like, yeah, maybe.
But we never see that be an issue before. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden it's an issue. Like, if you think to Empire Strikes Back, we have the Millennium Falcon going everywhere, not touching a lick of fuel, like, and it still gets on. Yeah, we have hyperdrive issues, and I mean that would have been a plausible explanation of what was going on if they were having hyperdrive issues other than the tracking that was going on. But no, we're running out of fuel. That's stupid.
Yeah, and being
It's not.
able to tap into it from Canto Bite to see how much time you have left, fuel you have left.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's some weird decisions that are going to be made, and I know that with the fandoms, there's always an explanation. Now, whether that
Yeah.
explanation is reasonable, whether it makes sense, whether it's the best choice, which is important because you're making a movie. You have an army of people that are assisting you in making the best product that you can deliver. And to be honest, the way that The Last Jedi was delivered, it was a bit aggressive.
Yep.
And it did leave J.J. Abrams and his co-writer, I forget his name, but it left them in a very touchy situation,
Yep.
especially after the whole Rose debacle. Kelly Marie Tran is a perfectly fine actress, and I think a lot of people have a hard time understanding that when a character is portrayed a certain way on the screen, it is the decision of the director. It is the
100%.
decision of the director to take certain lines, to take certain cuts, to inform the actor, actress, how they should be delivering the lines, the facial expressions they should be making. The actor is essentially a tool. Now you buy their services based on the quality that you're going to get from it, and they get paid accordingly based on their experience and ability. I do believe that a few of the characters in the film were written horribly, some intentionally. Like I said, the sacrifice with Poe, it was in service.
You're talking about Finn.
What do you mean?
I think you're talking about Finn.
No, I'm talking about the moral sacrifice of the character Poe in The Last Jedi to be this rebellious, doesn't listen to anybody, wants to shoot and blow everything up, and is made to look like a fool at every opportunity they get. For a character that was just delivered to fans as essentially your new Han Solo type character, they really did that character a disservice. And then they also did Finn tremendous disservice just in general storytelling, tacking him to this new character that was written fairly unlikable and was directed poorly. The shoehorning of certain messages and stuff, it leaves J.J. Abrams in a position where he can't tell the fun Star Wars story that he originally set up, with the Force Awakens. It left him in a position where he had to kind of just write things in to undo what had been done, and hopefully get as far away from it as possible. And the way they wrote that film, as fast as possible too, because the planet hopping that's going on is insane. The pacing is a bit hectic, and again, some of the decisions that were made weren't the best because it was just what they had at their disposal. So I think some of the movies are watchable. I think all the movies have their certain redeeming aspects, but the last film feels really fast, or really just kind of hectic, and not very satisfying at the end. And I do know for a fact that people on the internet, I see their comments all the time. They rationalize what it meant to them and what they feel and yada yada. I'm talking about it from more of a writing and general viewer perspective, where it's, you know, there's got to be a balance. There's got to be a story being told. It's got to feel consistent, and you know, the pieces that were being put together were not the best pieces they had to work with. So we got it. We got what we got.
Yeah, let's move on to the new content that we've gotten over the last, what, 3-4 years from Disney Plus.
Mm-hmm. You know, before getting into Disney Plus, you do have Clone Wars and Rebels,
Mm-hmm.
and Filoni's involvement in Star Wars in general after that, and being a good harbinger of the original message and
Yep.
story of it, having been mentored directly by George. He does have a good handle, and basically anything that he touches is likable
Yeah,
as a Star Wars
100%.
property. You know, and he did a fantastic job with Clone Wars, right?
Yeah, and I mean, Rebels is great too. I mean, I think with Clone Wars and Rebels, the first season is really kiddish.
Mm-hmm.
Um, then they really develop into their own show. Clone Wars gets dark,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like consistently dark cartoon adult show that if a kid watches, they're not going to be mortified, but they might miss a lot of the undertones, you know.
Yeah.
And Rebels, it doesn't have that same darkness to it, but it's serious. There's that delivering on a pointed message that same way the Clone Wars does.
Mm-hmm. It felt like it was expanding, you know, it felt like it
Yeah.
was adding to it.
Yeah, and the art styles are different than each other. I mean, like a lot of people criticize Rebels for the lightsabers being super thin and everything like that. But I mean, if you really have that viewpoint, go watch the original cut of the original New Hope.
Yes. Yeah.
No special edition, no Disney Plus edition, and your criticisms should be pointed there as well.
Yeah, what
But,
was it? It was a metal rod wrapped in like a foil reflector used
yeah,
for
it was like a
camera
reflecting
equipment
tape.
or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you heard it. You heard it when they were clanking them together. I remember that.
yeah.
You know, they added the you know, the sounds, but you still heard the
clashing,
clink. There was a
yeah.
clink.
Yep.
Good
And
stuff.
I mean, in all of the other material now, there is that clanking
Mhm.
noise when two lightsabers meet. It's definitely not as pronounced it was in that original cut.
Mm-hmm. It sounded more
but-
metal, to be honest, because it, you know,
Well,
essentially
exactly.
was. The newer
Yeah.
ones, the clash, you know, and it's an iconic sound, regardless of the tone of the lightsabers that are clashing.
Yeah.
You always know it.
Yeah.
Know, which is nice. So I mean, with taking into consideration Clone Wars and Rebels, those feel the way they feel and are received the way they're received because George was still ultimately involved one way or another with those properties, and the way
Yep.
that George was. He was hornswoggled a bit when it came to that deal with Disney.
I mean, he gave treatments for 7, 8, 9.
But they didn't use them.
They threw them away.
He threw them away.
And-
They
and
didn't use them.
I mean, I
That's the
don't know
hubris.
why they threw him away, and I don't know whose decision that was. I don't know if it was a Kathleen Kennedy thing or if it was a J.J. Abrams thing. But I've heard rumors about what those contain. I don't know how accurate the rumors are. I don't want to comment on those rumors because I don't know validity of them. But I mean, George had a story to tell. He had that story, at least treatments of the story. I don't know why they didn't run with those. Or at least bring in major aspects, because it sounds like they trashed those completely and just did what they wanted.
Because they didn't pay $5 billion to listen to somebody else. That's
Well,
just
no.
how it is. It's a hubris. They know, you know, they didn't buy this for nothing. They know what people want. You know, it's like,
Yeah.
we'll tell our story. You had your opportunity. It was a feigned respect for the creator of it. You know, it was PR
Yeah.
spin, you know, having him up on stage and certain comments that George makes. Jesus, no chill on
Yeah.
George. Chill is just no chill whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
so I mean, it's kind of a telling when that happened. I remember that distinctly. It's like, oh, so he's involved, but you guys aren't listening. And he even
Yeah.
said that, you know, blatantly. He's like, yeah, I wrote stuff, but they don't care.
It's disappointing, sad to see, but they did what they did. It's done for better or for worse, most likely worse for the general population.
And it led to the
Um,
Disney Plus.
Yes, Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I mean, Mandalorian. First season, I think that is top level Star Wars. I love the new characters, that feel of Star Wars, and I remember watching it as it was coming out weekly, and just having that excitement to know, like having that unknown of what was gonna happen.
I think it's also the uniqueness of the storytelling too.
Yeah,
John Favreau is a G. I mean, obviously his track
100%.
record with Marvel is nearly flawless. You can look back
Hmm.
on some of those original Iron Man films and like them or dislike them. They are what they were at the time, but you know the influence that they had is undeniable.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he really kicked off the MCU as we know it. He understands and respects the process of what George did, and he brought in the right people. Like
Mhm.
Dave Filoni was with him the whole process, and they've been good friends. I mean, when John was doing all the initial cuts and editing for Iron Man, Dave Filoni was working on Clone Wars, and when they were at ILM doing the different cuts and stuff, they would show each other the different stuff.
Mhm. Mhm.
So Dave Filoni was one of the first people to see Iron Man.
Oh, Favreau also had a cameo in Clone Wars, didn't he? Or
Oh yeah,
Rebels?
in Clone Wars, yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Mandalorian. And we'll save that for another discussion another time. And I mean, his voice is also in Mandalorian as
Yeah.
the big
Yeah, the big guy.
Mandalorian with the blue armor. His name is Paz Ren, or not Ren, Vizsla, excuse me. An ancestor of the person he portrayed in Clone Wars. Not ancestor, predecessor. Regardless, like I love the Mandalorian. What they brought in with Grogu and having that complete surprise going into that. I mean, I was watching the leaks and everything leading up to that because I was curious. Nobody saw that coming. Holy crap! It was beautiful.
What, the Grogu?
Yeah, and
Well, an expensive piece of equipment to keep secret.
so expensive. I mean, that first puppet, I think they were saying it was like $4 or $5 million.
5.
Yeah, with Mandalorian, I don't know. It's just so good. First season again is like that new expansion of Star Wars. It's just beautiful, and I love the progression that we see in Din Djarin or Mando, whatever you want to call him, having that fear of droids because I mean when he grew up in the Clone Wars and getting attacked by the droid army and Mandalorians coming to save him, and um, oddly enough, they were Death Watch Mandalorians, so not even like the good Mandalorians at the time. Then he becomes, a child of the Watch and culty and all that. But it's just so nice to see that story progression of him starting to trust IG-11 and trusting other people and utilizing them and becoming a dad with this little creature that can't talk but obviously trusts him,
I think it
you
did
know?
a good service for characters that wear masks.
Well, in like a lot of other characters in Star Wars wear masks, but you still see a face. You still see something there. And I mean, it's Star Wars. I mean, we have most perfect villain in probably cinema history in Darth Vader. You know exactly what Darth Vader was feeling. You knew the emotion and you knew the feelings there.
I mean, it's nice to have him remove the helmet so he has that moment with his son. But how many times have you seen him? You know, you've seen some skin on Vader in Obi-Wan. You know, you see his eyes, you see his face, you see that they want to show you that it is Hayden Christensen.
Well,
And
and I think the other part that they're trying to portray is Vader's still healing, like physically. I mean, he's never fully healed, and he has to spend a lot of time in Bacta tanks. I mean, we see that in Rogue One too. You see the Bacta tank with Vader in it, and like I don't know, it's just that progression of Vader's never fully healed mentally, emotionally, physically from everything that went down in the
where
prequels.
were those tanks in The Last Jedi? You remember Finn's suit, the water suit, where he pulls himself up and the water's
Yeah,
squirting all over the place like it's a comedy film, and then there's like this little glass shield that's over him while he's healing, and it's like, what? Like,
yeah.
what is it only for Jedi's? Is that what those tanks are for?
No,
Because
I
like
mean
they
we
do it
see Boba
to
Fett
like true.
in a tank.
And well, and you
I
got Carrie
think
Fisher
it's
under that same machinery. You know, they put her in that little weird plastic dome that just kind of goes over the torso, and it's like I don't know, like even down to that detail, it felt like a different route was taken unnecessarily.
yeah. Well, and I think they were also trying to portray that technology had come along in the 30 years, but I mean it's Star Wars, who cares? Everything's advanced.
I just think the water suit was stupid, and that
Yo,
scene
100%.
where BB-8 is like, Finn, water, naked, blah blah blah, and then look over and he's squirting water all over the place, and it's just like, like this is
Yeah,
supposed to be a
it's
dramatic
weird.
moment, and it's like, all he cares about is Rey, and it's like, oh, here we go. So,
Yeah.
going back to the Disney Plus, yeah, I think with the way that they're portraying it, the certain people that they're choosing for these properties, they're showing a decent respect for it. I think that Obi-Wan, it's been commented on already, is some of the action scenes that don't involve lightsabers are a bit lame. The I understand the scene where Leia, which me personally, I don't think the character should even be in the show, but Leia running through the forest trying to escape the bad guys. Everybody's seen it, getting caught up on branches that are easily avoidable. Obi-Wan and Leia being held up at the checkpoint and frantically trying to figure out how they're going to walk past this fence that they could literally just walk around. There's a lot of weird decisions that are made. We had the discussion on the lightsaber, the Inquisitor saber being, popped in half, and then they're fighting, and then all of a sudden the saber is put back together on the floor, and then you went in and looked at, where the saber is and who has it, and Vader does have it complete in his hand at one point, but you don't see how it's put together. And the second ship in this most recent episode of Obi-Wan, there's that, the subversion. It doesn't feel like George telling the story, like I said. It doesn't feel like
Yeah.
George would have needed to do that.
Well,
But
and one thing I just want to comment on before we get too far on, just with Disney Plus in general, like with Rogue One and Rebels and now Obi-Wan, they're handling Darth Vader exactly how I would want Darth Vader to be handled, as the boogeyman. Literally, like when he's walking on Mapuzo and like Obi-Wan senses him and goes to look out the door and sees him, and like he's just like walking down the street menacingly,
murdering people.
casually murdering people, like snapping
Yeah.
people's necks and stuff, and force choking them, and like that is the boogeyman that I always hoped and knew Darth Vader was. And I'm just so happy that they're handling him right.
Yeah.
Then we have literally Vader torturing Obi-Wan the way
Dragging
that
him
he
through the
like
fire, yeah.
dragging him through the fire.
I think there was a
And
comic book, right, that had that he dreams
where
about it. Like that's literally what he
yeah,
dreams about is being on that other end of the situation on Mustafar, where he's watching Obi-Wan burn and just kind of basking in it.
yeah,
It's a callback to that. There's a lot of callbacks. But going back to Mando, I think we could both agree that Grogu is insane good choice of marketing. It's like that.
100%.
Oh my god! Like I don't think a character has been marketed like that successfully in so long. Like it took Disney quite a while for Mickey to be, where Grogu ended up overnight, and with
Well, and that's the thing. It was such a bold decision because, I mean, Jon Favreau told the marketing people that they can't have any digital files of Grogu until after the show was released. So it took months for products to be announced and shipped
I have
with
it framed.
Grogu.
I have the first concept image of Grogu. I actually had it put on a canvas print, and I gave it
Nice.
to my fiance for like Christmas or something like that. It was one of the
Yeah.
gifts. But yeah, that first picture where he's kind of sitting and he's standing in the desert, and you could see the ship in the background, and it's just kind of like an artist's rendition of it. But yeah, it was after the show had been released. And that was like the only image that popped up. There were no Funko Pops. There were no toys. There were no clothes. There were no comics. There were no stickers. There was no nothing. There was no marketing
Yeah.
at McDonald's or Best Buy or what have you. There was nothing. And,
Yeah.
you were
Well,
kind of
and-
scrounging at that time. I remember that. And that's why I had that picture framed, because it was like the first picture to squeeze out of what they were doing when they were making it. And it might be a
Yeah.
little bit hokey, but she loves the character, and it's a cute character.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, I remember after it got released and they finally had that first like little stuffed animal, or not stuffed animal, but stuffed Grogu with the hard head. My niece wanted that so bad. I remember having to go to several different stores to find it. and to get it for. And then like they were always sold out, and it wasn't for like a year before I got one for myself because it just took so long for because people would just buy them constantly. Like, and I mean, now I have it as a Christmas decoration, eating an elf on the shelf. It's great.
Yeah.
Um,
I pre-ordered the first Funko Pop when it released.
yeah, I mean, I have it's like the deluxe Funko Pop of Mando and Baby Yoda, like with him floating in the little egg carrier. It's one of my favorite things. But with Grogu, Mandalorian, and I mean ultimately what they do in season 2, they just do such a good job. I don't know how I feel about like having all the cameos that in season 2. I mean, I felt like they were expanding so much, and they kind of like plateaued on the expanding for a while. I loved the fact that they brought in Bo-Katan from Clone Wars, and having Katie Sackhoff portray her was perfect, the original voice actor. And Katie Sackhoff is she's a great person. Really like what she does. Then like, let's talk about Luke. You want to talk about Luke?
Oh, Luke. Yeah. I mean, I've seen that scene tons of times. I like to watch
It's
people's
beautiful.
reactions to it. I like all of it. I think the way that the thing with Mandalorian, and even though they tapped into the member berries pretty hard, it's handled by somebody or people that respect it. You can tell it's not necessarily being used. It's being utilized to give people what they want. And I think even the most cynical fan can pull some enjoyment out of watching Luke tear through that hallway. I think the music for that portion was a bit too somber. But his intro was pretty epic. You do get to see Master Luke in his full glory, and it was pretty obvious to me the second that the X-wing showed up. It was
it was 100% obvious.
And to watch the speculation on people's faces when they're watching that scene, it's a bit concerning.
For me, the second they said, X-wing,
Oh, yeah.
or it's a single X-wing, I was like, that's Luke. It has to be
Luke's
Luke.
here. Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's like there's no one else in my mind it could have been, and like there was still that anticipation, like we don't see his face. Is it really Luke? But you knew it's Luke, and then you see his lightsaber, and
I love the black
like,
Jedi
everything
outfit.
is
I love it.
just right with the world at that moment, and it's just I don't know.
I got Anakin vibe when he walks in right into frame. You get that
100%.
rear view. It's immediately conveying to you that this is a Skywalker, right? And it's like the confidence and stride. It was very intentional, and it was like the people that were involved in making those decisions understood that they were amping up this scene. They were slowly increasing that knob for people that were aware of what was going on, because it's like, all right, here it comes. Like, get ready, and
well, exactly. And I mean, also just to add into this, I feel like they did a really good job of portraying the Dark Troopers.
Are they Dark Troopers or Death Troopers? No, what was?
They're not.
There's
they're
so
not
many.
Death Troopers.
There's so many now. The Sith Troopers, another one that it's like, what?
Yeah, but I think they're called Dark Troopers. In Rebels, there's like Phase 1 Dark Troopers, but they're still robots. That character called Thrawn. I don't know how much you know about Thrawn.
I'm aware. I know the imagery. I know the importance of the character, but I don't know the character.
Yeah. Thrawn is by far one of my most favorite Star Wars characters. We'll talk about that another time. But Thrawn, like as training, fights these robotic Dark Troopers, and I think they're called Dark Troopers. I could be wrong. Don't hate me if I'm wrong. So I think that's what they're called, and I can't remember if Moff Gideon says Dark Troopers or what he said, but the big black battle droids essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, Din Djarin struggles to take out one, and then like the impact of Luke literally just wiping the floor with them and just having complete control of the situation.
Well,
like he lets one shoot right at him and he's just like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not gonna die.
Dodge, reflect. Yeah,
Yeah.
My thing is I could have sworn, I do need to rewatch those episodes. There was just a lot to catch up. But I could have sworn that there was a line of dialogue in there that stated that the troopers they aggro the most dominant threat.
Yeah, Gideon does say that.
He does say that, right? So it's like they backed off that door because something more powerful entered the arena, and like that in itself should have been clarification enough,
Well, exactly. Then the other thing that I felt was really pointing to Luke Skywalker is the second they said it's a single X-wing, Moff Gideon looked scared. He looked in control and
Yeah.
like confident until that point.
Mm-hmm.
When
He knows.
single X-wing came out, he knew exactly who
He
it
knows.
was,
He knew
and
exactly who.
he was deathly afraid of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why he tried to kill himself because he didn't want to face Luke.
Yeah.
Like, anyways,
Good scene.
again, I just
Touching. Very, very, very rough at the end
yeah,
of that scene. You know, and that goes to show you. I mean, I don't think a single person that I saw in terms of like reaction videos and just general commentary about that scene didn't get choked up at the end of that, because it's like, what is
oh, I
Mandalorian
teared up
without
for sure.
Grogu? You know, like how's this story going to be told? How are they going to pick it off? Like, I don't even want to enjoy this show without that character. Whether or not
Yeah,
that was remedied intentionally through Boba Fett, or if that was originally the plan to begin with, that's
it,
probably what we should end up talking about. But before we do that,
yeah,
let's talk about Gideon and the Darksaber.
yeah. Okay, so I don't. I mean, there's Gideon is a whole new character for Star Wars, being introduced to Mandalorian. The dude, like, obviously has done some stuff, and I mean, we see it in season 2 where he's the one in charge of destroying Mandalore. Who did he kill to get that? I mean, in Rebels, so we know who last had it, and that was Bo-Katan. And I mean, did he steal it? What did he do to get that? And what dishonor did he bring on Bo-Katan? Because she obviously gets some shade, a lot of shade from the armorer. But it's just like the dude has done some stuff, crazy stuff. I don't know if he's force sensitive, but he knows how to handle that.
Yeah.
I mean, we see Din struggling it with in season 2, and like training with it, and still struggling so bad to control it. I think there's more story to be told with Moff Gideon. We know he's going to be in season 3. There's been some rumors and suggestions by some of the actors that there's going to be like a jailbreak of Gideon, and there's going to be stuff going down. Who knows how that will pan out? I'm excited. I feel even if he's gets freed again, there's more confrontation. I'm really glad they didn't bring in some known person to
Mm-hmm.
fill his role, because there's mysteriousness there.
Yeah.
There's the element of the unknown. We know he was involved most likely in the Republic army, and or I guess it would be Navy, and then went into the Empire, and now is with the Remnant. And I'm just really interested to see what they develop for him moving forward. You know?
It's just something about them not being like unique. You know, it's like I like the wide variety of alien species that you have in Star Wars, and how anybody can be a Sith or a Jedi. You have so many,
Yeah.
such a variety, you know. And whenever I see a character that's introduced that it's just a person in an outfit, it's kind of boring, you know. And
Well,
I don't know. That's
to
just, I think
go.
that's more of like a subconscious thing for me personally, where it's just like, well, this person's not that interesting, and that right there, when and you know, we'll get into Obi-Wan here in a minute, but the sacrifice of the Grand Inquisitor for Riva, which to me, because of that in particular, had already been perceived as a more boring character for me, was kind of disheartening, because I did like the Grand Inquisitor's his feel, you know, his vibe.
I mean, to your point, I don't think they could have done an alien character for Moff Gideon. The Empire was completely alien, or not anti-alien, but I mean, it was humans only in the Empire military.
You had a little wiggle room. It's like you have the Inquisitors. She's the only one that's not some type of alien creature, right?
Yeah, I mean, in we have the second sister from Fallen Order, who is also
Mm-hmm.
human, and there's maybe one or two others that are human that we see in comics or in later comics. I mean, I don't pay too much attention to the comics right now. There's just so much of it coming out, and so the second sister and third sister are both human. So the one from Fallen Order, then Reva. But I mean, the Grand Inquisitor is um,
Yeah.
speculated to be from Utapau, which we see in Revenge of the Sith. Then we have, I mean, I don't know what the other Inquisitor. where she's from in Obi-Wan, but she looks great. I like the characterization, the outfit that she has, and
Hmm.
the alienness. I don't know what to say, but then the fifth brother, he shows up in Rebels, and we know his fate. I don't know if you've seen all the way through Rebels or
No, I
much of Rebels,
haven't seen
but
much of Rebels actually.
I don't want to go into too much without you seeing that. But I love what they're doing with the Inquisitors, having basically be pawns of the Sith, and
Yeah. And I could see how people get
taking
a little
them.
bit upset about how they've diverted away from some of the designs and stuff like that. Grand Inquisitor's design doesn't have the black shading under his eyes and all
I
that,
mean,
but
he does.
it's
It's
pretty good.
just not as
It's pretty
prominent.
black in the other, the cartoon representation of it.
Yeah, but I mean,
Pretty
and
morbid looking.
that's yeah. But here's the thing: in the cartoons, or the characters that have come into live action, there's always been some type of difference.
And vice versa.
What?
And vice
Yeah.
versa. It's like there's always slight differences, and it totally passable for me when I saw the characters' original forms and what they ended up as.
Oh,
Totally
100%.
fine. Like totally fine. Like within the
And I think,
wheelhouse.
and I think that should always be the case. That there should be a difference between the animated version and the live action version. I always want to keep those separate in my brain for some reason. I don't know if that's just a me thing or if that just feels right to other people. But I really like what they did with the Grand Inquisitor still. And the Fifth Brother, because he looks different. He looks a little more thick than the portrayal in Rebels.
Hmm.
I don't know. I really like what they are doing with that. Anyways,
Yeah, to finish off the Gideon and Darksaber, I mean, I like seeing the Darksaber. I think it's not a deep cut as it used to be. It's cool to see that little bit of variety. I liked it.
yeah. Well, I mean, the dark saber was created by the first Mandalorian Jedi,
Hmm.
um,
Grogu will be the next.
most likely.
Hmm.
But I can't remember his first name, but it's a Vizsla, and so like the blue armored big Mandalorian, he's a Vizsla. So like, I mean, I think he even that saber belongs to my family or something like that, or that weapon belongs to my family.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I mean, it's true. He's a direct descendant of the person that created it. But I love the fact that it's so different and it truly unique. And between the blade and everything else, it truly fits what Mandalore, or like what it means to be Mandalore.
I don't know. There's just something about the blade, the way they showed the blade. It kind of feels like they dampened it a little bit so that they could sell this Darksaber at Galaxy's Edge. You know what I mean? Like, it's just something about it.
I know what you're going at, and I mean, between the dark saber sounds different than any other lightsaber.
Mhm.
It's definitely unique in the blade shape out of any other lightsaber. There's that like the black core instead of having a white core. I mean, it's completely unique, but there is that extra aura that is in the Clone Wars, and it's not as prevalent in Rebels.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
But it is present. I feel like they could have made that a little more obvious
Yeah.
in
You see it
live
in the show,
action.
yeah. You see it when they're clashing and stuff like that.
And
I'm
you
happy to see
can
it.
see that.
I'm not complaining. I'm happy to see the
Yeah.
Darksaber,
Well, and you can see the crackle. It's just so subtle.
Yeah.
While it's so prevalent in Clone Wars, like I wish they would have done more with that.
I would think
It's
that
really
actually
cool
the majority
effect.
of my issue with it is the initial scene where he punctures the side of the TIE fighter. It coming out of the side of the TIE fighter just kind of, it's like,
Mhm.
I knew what that moment was. I thought it was sick regardless, but it was like, it's Star Wars.
Yeah.
They could have done a little bit better, but I think all in all, it was still good. And the fact that you can buy the hilt at Galaxy's Edge is pretty sick.
Yep.
So, I don't mind the character being, not a big fan of them kind of just dumping new characters in for stories to be built around. But I get it. I think if they're going to do that, it'd be best to just kind of stray away from this Tatooine storyline, this Luke Skywalker storyline, and introduce new characters that you can get behind. And it's like, I know the Grand Inquisitor, he's going to have a role to play, but his role was specifically to be a secondary antagonist in the series of Obi-Wan. It's like,
Yeah.
that
And
character
I mean,
introduced in like an old Republic type setting, it's like, okay, so this person's going to be a consistent thorn in everybody's side, and it's like
y-
you're wanting to see their development, and you're wanting to see, and my issue with with some of these new characters is that they're kind of just thrown in there. They're not really like fleshed out.
Yeah, you should really watch Rebels. The Grand Inquisitor, I mean, he has good backstory in it. He is a great villain in that.
He's
And
cool. I
he's
liked it.
that,
I liked the way he looked. I liked the way he talked. I
yeah,
liked the way he upheld himself. It was just like, oh, okay, so we're getting back to like a Dooku type of vibe, you know? It's like this very confident type of individual. And then he gets
yeah.
poked. He's
Well,
gone. It's like,
yeah, he
no.
gets poked, but
Everybody knew
he
he's coming
doesn't
back.
die.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a second. Let's finish up the Gideon Darksaber. My opinion, it's cool. It was completely appropriate.
Yep.
It fits with Mandalorian. It's cool to see Mandalorian or Mando have the Darksaber. I liked his staff, but it was melted down.
I know that the armor is pushing along the Mandalorian story, but her being so adamant that they can't have the staff of Beskar,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of bothered me a little bit. Not a lot of the Mandalorians in Clone Wars had spears, but they had like pikes type deals,
Mm-hmm.
like double-sided pikes. And it was the Royal Guard specifically that had them, and not just the security units. The security units had a shield and what would be like just a beat down stick that like cops have.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay. But when it comes down to injecting these characters that already, we get a lot in Boba Fett. Boba Fett, halfway through that season, it liked to take a 90-degree turn and head off back to Mando, and the story got kind of hijacked, and you get Luke, you get Ahsoka, you get Mando, you get baby Yoda, Grogu, you get all kinds of member berries.
yeah,
Is that a good thing?
I mean, they're trying to create this integrated story, and I don't know if them calling the Mandalorian show the Mandalorian and Boba Fett show Boba Fett, or Book of Boba Fett, and whatever they're going to call the Ahsoka show, or if it's just going to be Ahsoka. I don't know if that's the right approach to it, because if they're going to be doing all this interweaving, it's very Clone Wars-esque in that department, like where you have major storyline arcing, then you have all these little interweaving things where we're going to get Mando. You're like, we better get, and I'm assuming we're going to get Mando and Grogu and Ahsoka show, and we're going to get Ahsoka back in. And I mean, when they announced all of these extra shows beyond the Mandalorian, they did say that there was going to be a culmination of all of these shows into this big event. And we can talk about what that big event will be another time. I have some speculation. I have some hopes for that.
Well, it's the holiday show, obviously.
No, yeah.
Star Wars Christmas Part 2.
No.
What?
They've done the Lego holiday or Lego Christmas or whatever it was. That's perfectly acceptable, and they really did some poking at the original holiday special, which I appreciated, because that's such a piece of work.
It's terrible.
Oh, my wife and I tried to watch that a couple years ago. Like, I made her sit down and watch it with me, and like we could not finish.
It'll ruin
like,
Star Wars for you.
Oh, it's just so bad. And anyways,
it is what it is. It's part of history.
But anyways, I going back to like what I was talking about. I don't know if having these shows be truly independent on their own is the right way, because they're going to be doing so much integration with. It's really this big storyline that they're breaking into multiple parts, and like I said, there's going to be interweaving, and I think that's the right approach to what they're wanting to accomplish. But like I said, the naming thing is what I think throws people off a lot. I mean, when Book of Boba Fett was announced at the end of season 2, that last little sequence, all of the talk at that point was, like from legitimate sources, where there's going to be interweaving between the different shows. And I think that is the right approach to having these stories being told. It's all culminating into this big story that's in between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, and it's a big story. And I'm excited for what they're doing.
Yeah, I don't know. When Book of Boba Fett was announced, I hit it with a little bit of cynicism, just because it was just another character that some gymnastics had to be done to get him back into. I understand that there's comic books, whether or not you have these stories, these novels, these comic books, these everything that Disney apparently negated and are now cherry picking things to pull back in. And I think that has caused an issue with how certain fans are perceiving the story they're being told. To a certain
Mm-hmm.
extent, it's not like my favorite approach to it, because it seems somewhat unreliable, and so much effort went into creating these backstories, and people are so familiar with it that, you know, you do have people in basic conversations like we're having where it's hard not to mention things that were once perceived as just the truth, you know, how things were,
Yeah.
and all this data that you've accumulated over decades, to be negated and then cherry picked after. It makes it a little bit weird, and it's just the way that they're bringing in the characters. I think as long as the people that are responsible doing it are respectable to the source material, then it's fine. Not a big fan of seeing Luke again. Not a big fan of Ahsoka just chilling with him.
Well,
I can get it. I
I
understand. There's narrative lines to lead to that conclusion, but
and
yeah.
you know what I'm most sad about that? I'm not sad that Luke and Ahsoka were around. I love that she said, like, I'm a family friend or something like that. What I'm sad about is we didn't see the initial introduction of them and saying who Ahsoka was to Anakin and having that conversation of what that meant. I know Dave Filoni has said that he knows what that conversation, like how that took place and what that would look like. He just doesn't know how to tell that story yet, and I'm excited for that. I think for the vision that they have, I think they needed to have Luke there. They needed to have those training sequences to show Grogu's progression and where he's coming along, and having that unlocking moment of his memory of being in the temple again. And I think those are valuable things for the overall story and not necessarily the Book of Boba Fett story. I mean, I'm assuming in Mandalorian Season 3 we're going to have another Ahsoka prominent thing like we did with Episode 5 of Mandalorian Season 2, or we might get a book or a Boba Fett episode, or in Ahsoka we might see a Mandalorian prominent episode. I think that's the way that they should do it, to have that intertwined story, to have the connectivity that they have in Marvel in Star Wars. I want that, and I think that's what we need. But I just want to talk a little bit about Boba Fett.
Well, I got a
find it
question real quick.
Okay. Yeah.
Does having the resolution to a cliffhanger from a different show be resolved cheapen the impact of that season finale of Mando Season 2? Does it cheapen the impact of the return of that show by sacrificing the impact of that scene?
That is a great question, and I don't think so. I don't feel so, at least. I feel...
Can you watch Mando without watching Boba Fett now?
Based on what they are doing with the story, again, and what I'm really trying to convey here is they're creating one story, and it's taking forms of The Mandalorian, the Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and whatever shows that they bring into this. It's all one story. If you miss one part of it, if you don't watch Book of Boba Fett, you're missing a chunk of the story, and that's ultimately on the viewer.
That is frustrating to some. Not me personally. I like that type of stuff. That's actually why I'm a big fan of Marvel, but it is frustrating to people that just want to watch a show and want to enjoy something. It can be frustrating, and it does sacrifice certain viewership because some people don't have that disposable time to hop from show to show just to kind of keep in line. If the random person were to fire up Mandalorian, be like, oh my god, this show's great, second season epic, and then hopping into the third season, it's gonna be so jarring to be like, wait, what? Why are they together? What's going on? Like, what is this? And then they have to go watch the recap and be like, where did this scene happen? And then it's like, oh, this is a different show? What? It's a bit weird.
That goes back to what I was saying. I think the approach they are taking is the right approach, and that's why I don't feel like what happens in the last episode of Season 2 is taking away, or that impact is taken away or anything. I feel like the naming convention of the way that they're doing the shows could be different to show that it is one story, it is one trajectory that they're going on. So I feel like that could be better, but I don't think it's cheapened. I don't think that Mando or Din Djarin and Grogu being separated is cheapened in any way, you better believe at the beginning of Mandalorian Season 3 that there's going to be a recap where it's going to show previously on Mandalorian,
Yeah.
previously on Book of Boba Fett. And that
Mhm.
will give like the needed information that people that only want to watch Mandalorian what they need, and an opportunity to go, oh, I should probably go watch Book of Boba Fett to see what I missed there, or what else did I miss there. And ultimately, Disney needs to make money via viewership, so
And
they're
then those
going
people
to
are going
do
to go
that.
over and watch Boba Fett and see some floating ugly ass scooters bopping around.
Yeah. Well,
Good God.
um,
How dare they?
I'm not disagreeing, but again, I feel like their approach to the storytelling is correct, and it doesn't. There's no cheapening of what's been done so far. I do feel like there should be some type of overall naming convention to the shows to really point to the fact that it is one storyline.
Hmm.
That's just my opinion. What are your thoughts?
I'm a bit cynical. I think that if you're going to dip and pull a character, it's got to be for like the right reasons, and I think Boba Fett in particular felt unwarranted. Like I was talking about earlier, I do know that there was a novel or a comic where it explicitly detailed how Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc pit and all that good stuff. But I know you're a big fan of the actor. It's just he didn't look like Boba Fett. He looked like somebody at a cosplay event, Comic Con, dressed as Boba Fett.
Well, I mean,
Doing their best.
yeah, I mean, we know, like, okay, real quick. I just want to talk about how we got how we got Boba Fett again. I mean, are you a Parks and Rec fan?
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so we have the episode where Patton Oswalt does like a
Yeah.
filibuster.
Yeah, how to connect
And he talks
the
about,
Marvel, and was it the connect the Marvel and Star Wars universes and all that shit?
yeah, but he specifically says and like talks about Boba Fett reaching through the sand and is still alive.
Yeah.
I just find that hilarious that like that's how we see Boba escape the Sarlacc as he punches out of the sand and crawls his
It
way
was
out.
100%
I'm,
real. He wrote that,
oh,
and he went on for like hours or something. Like it was.
oh yeah, that was 100% Patton Oswalt.
What a nerd.
Anyways,
Love
I
it.
just wanted to plug that just because it's
Yeah,
great.
it was funny. I mean,
But
it wasn't out of nowhere too. That concept had pretty much existed. I do
yeah,
remember seeing something where it did show or explicitly detail like how he dug his way out. This show, I mean, whatever, it's cool to see the Sarlacc pit again and all that, but again, it's the member berries of going back to that moment that you remember, to bring back the character that you remember.
well,
And
in Legends, and I mean it's been hinted at over and over and over in canon that Boba is most likely alive. Um, so
I,
the fact that he shows up,
I
I
think
mean,
my issue is that after all of that, this is what you get. You get like 4 episodes of Boba Fett being kind of lame, getting his
well,
ass
yeah,
kicked, and then they segue into another show, and that's it. Then you
yeah,
come back at the
well,
end. There's a little
yeah,
bit of a bow, and then you get Rancor, and then that's the end of that.
yeah. I feel like they could have done Boba Fett better. We've talked about this in the past, how you know, like in the episode of Mandalorian, Boba Fett reclaims his armor. He looks a little, tubby for Boba Fett,
He had a lot
but
of shape. Boba Fett's a pretty small guy, actually. If you look in the original film, this is a skinny dude
oh,
underneath there.
100%. I think it's Jeremy Bullock. He was a
Yeah,
skinny dude.
he was pretty skinny. He got a little
Um,
bit of a gut, I think, but he was a lengthy guy. The
yeah,
armor looked
but
good on him because it was a bulkier armor.
yeah, but like with Tamara Morrison coming back, I feel like they purposely like left with him a little bit like almost like a beer gut almost and everything. Like I felt like it was right for the most part, but the thing that I really appreciated about that episode is Boba Fett was just kicking butt. Like that is exactly what we all envision and hope for when we think about Boba Fett. It's like, him shooting stuff out of his kneecap, like using all of the different gadgets and just looking completely.
That also might be an issue with my perception of the character, is that
Mhm.
you had very little to work with in our youth of Boba Fett. You know, you see the
Yeah,
appearances. There's a couple words he says, being smooth with the ladies, and then he falls down a pit.
yeah,
Very boringly, you know, just falls into a pit and he's gone. So growing up, you know, you're looking at these video games. I think there was a Boba Fett level in Shadows of the Empire. Might be mistaken. I'm pretty sure there was. Then you know, me personally, you have Battlefront. I didn't play Battlefront 2, the original, as much as I did like Pod Racer um, and Rogue Squadron and things like that. But
yeah,
I
man.
played the hell out of the new Battlefront 2. You know, that's a pretty decent representation of how that character gets down. You know, and
Yeah,
I don't know. In my head, I see Boba Fett kind of controlling a fight from a slight distance, partially in the air, utilizing tops of buildings. You know, long range shots, the rocket on his back. You know, and you do get a bit of that, but it didn't have like a commanding presence, you know, like he was like, oh, okay, Boba's here, you know, like he's gonna like run this moment, you know, he's gonna take charge. He was kind of
well,
just like fighting and fumbling through it, and you know, the shield scene was preposterous, where they all get like pinned by the shields and stuff.
yeah, but that goes back to what we see of him in the Mandalorian episode. He's kicking butt, taking names. He's in control of the situation. Then we don't really see that again
Mm-mm.
in the Book of Boba Fett. We see this broken man who's still healing from
Again,
all that he went through between the Sarlacc and then the Tuskens, and he's fragile. And it just doesn't make sense from what we saw in Mandalorian, in
yeah,
my opinion.
that's my personal opinion, is that it just didn't live up to like how I wanted to see Boba Fett. And also, I
Yeah,
mean, same thing with, I mean, you know, we'll segue right into Obi-Wan. That's another issue with, it's like I just got done seeing a beloved character be frail and inadequate and struggling to be the character they used to be. And so I did
yeah.
not want to see Obi-Wan do that. And there are certain, you know,
Well,
it's like, yeah, he ran in the scene. You know, everybody saw it. Yeah, I understand he looked over his shoulder because he was conveying to the audience that he is intentionally distracting Vader to pull him away from the other people. And
yeah,
you know, it's whatever. I understand, and that's the thing, is like I get everything that they're trying to tell me. I just don't like it. And like that
yeah.
was, and I do like Obi-Wan. I mean, Ewan McGregor is sick. I love Hayden Christensen being back. I'm here for the boys. You know, this was the youth we were talking about. I love seeing those
Yep.
scenes. The Vader fight scenes are sick. Obi-Wan, you know, a little bit of his Clone Wars flair. But you know, going back to like episode 3, the level of intensity that he was fighting with in that movie, that's not something you just forget, dude. Like the precision
Well,
and aggressiveness and just flow. It's like I haven't golfed in quite a while, but I guarantee you if I picked up a golf club right now, I could still swing it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
to
And
to lessen his abilities, to convey that you're supposed to be concerned for his well-being because he's detached from the force and that he's frail and older, it doesn't hit right with me because it's only been 10 years, you know. And it's like you look at that precision in episode 3, and it's so like, watch Ewan McGregor in that film, and his movements are so clean and so choreographed and so precise and perfect that it's like, to see him run away, and it's like, yeah, it's been a while, but I mean, you know, he's getting his ass kicked. He can't even
yeah.
parry properly. The
Well,
flare's not there. The poses aren't there. He does
yeah.
that little twirl. I get it. You know, that's supposed to be that moment where you say, oh, he's coming back a little bit. But those are intentional tugs on your heartstrings. And like, I don't want to see
Oh,
that.
yeah.
I want it to be naturally pulled out because I'm seeing him, you know, he's a little bit rusty, but it's still Obi-Wan, you know? And it's like, I don't got that. It's still Obi-Wan. It's like Luke. It's like Boba Fett. It's the same thing where it's like you have these characters that have lost it, and you're watching them get it back a little bit as they make a slight influence on this grand story. And
Yeah.
I don't like that. I didn't like that for Obi-Wan. I didn't like it for Boba Fett, and with Luke, I mean, that was solely episode what was that, 8?
Yeah.
You know.
So let me put my spin on this. I feel like with Luke and Boba Fett, 100% wrong. I feel like with Obi-Wan, I feel like after everything he went through with losing his apprentice to the dark side, losing every single person he's ever cared about in moments, of course he's going to be downtrodden. He's going to be scared to use the Force. He's going to not want to be found out to protect Luke. So I feel like this, where he's at in the series, is where I would be expecting him to be at this point in time. I feel like this is, out of any of the Broken Man stories, this is the one to tell. I feel like in the next episode we're gonna see Obi-Wan back at peak Obi-Wan. He's gonna be back in tune with the Force enough to like have all of those Obi-Wanisms completely there again. He's gonna be what we want and expect from him.
And you're talking about this upcoming episode, or are you talking about
Yeah.
I don't
And
know, no time left, dude. I mean, it's like, even if they did do it, it'd be like just giving a dog a bone, you know. They wanted to tell
that might be
something
the
different.
case.
They didn't want to give us the Clone Wars flashbacks, which I was here for. I demanded it. It's like, okay, so you got Ahsoka, you got Hayden Christensen back, which is crazy, and then you got Ewan McGregor back, who's minimal involvement because he wants, most likely to be on the big screen, much like Qui-Gon.
I think we're still there's an opportunity still to see a Clone Wars flashback. I don't know. I think that there's
That's what I was
still
here
opportunity.
for, though. I don't want
Oh, I
it.
know,
Now
I
it's going to
know.
be shoehorned. Like, I wanted to see a couple flashbacks, some character development, the ties between the three. Harken back to the Clone Wars to bring in those people. You get a live action representation of maybe a fight that you've already seen, but in live action, and you're just like, oh my god, you see them
Yeah.
in the battle armor, you see them out there slicing up, but we haven't gotten that. The flashback is him slicing younglings. I know I made the comment off air. But the close up on Hayden Christensen's face in one of those scenes was like laughable. And I was looking at it after seeing that scene, when Anakin goes into the council, or the temple, and he's slaughtering the kids and all that. There's just a general difference in how he's presented as a character, and the way that it was portrayed in the show. It literally looked like they just threw a blanket over Hayden Christensen. And this is getting nitpicky, but I mean, look at that scene and compare it to like kind of how dark and epic that scene was in the original film. It has like a blue light on his face. I mean, it's his lightsaber, but you see a lot of his neck. He's obviously skinnier. His hair's not as long, so they're covering it up as much as they can. And it doesn't. It's just certain things like that where I think they could have done a little bit more. It's like throw in the yellow eyes. Bring back the exact outfit that he was wearing instead of whatever the hell that was. It's like, Anakin's cloak. You know his robe. It's different from the other Jedi, and not only just because it's black. It has a lot of creases in the hood. It has big shoulders. His outfit in that film was partial leather. He had the leather kind of sash that was going over it, which typically, the tunics will be just your fabrics, and different varying colors of beige and black. But, he had this stature to him in that film, and they didn't really try that hard on that scene. So I recommend going and checking that scene out. And it's like, if you watch it right after, or vice versa, you watch that original scene, it's like, it was a little iffy. Like, I probably would have been better if they just left it out.
No, and I with that particular thing, I think you're right. Like, because I mean, when I was watching that series of shots, looking up for the lightsaber that we talked about, how it got split in two and how it got back together, that shot that you're talking about is in there, and he looks like old Hayden. He looks like short hair.
He looks good.
And
hey, he looks good for his age.
He looks good.
He looks fine.
But
a little bit of wrinkles. He's got the crow's feet. He's got the crow's feet going on, and it's noticeable.
100%. But they could have put more effort into his appearance in that shot.
Just that flashback. And I'm here for Hayden Christensen and Ewan McGregor. They are the Jedis of my youth, So it's
Yeah,
like
but again, this isn't Hayden's fault.
no
This is costuming's fault.
costuming and direction, just camera angle. If the director of photography was the one responsible for that shot, the upward look, I get it. It's from the eyes of a child. There's a lot of murmurs on the internet and other reviews about the first scene of the series, where the younglings are practicing Tai Chi for some reason, and then all of a sudden the camera gets this artificial shake to
Yeah.
convey that hectic emotion, when in reality it really doesn't make any sense and it's kind of goofy.
Well, and the camera doesn't need to do that. We already get that feeling
Yeah.
because we know exactly what's happening. Just because when you see a bunch of younglings and like any Star Wars content now,
Yes. Oh.
you know what's about to happen.
True.
Like,
True. Even when
yeah.
you see
So
them,
like,
even when you see them frozen in I don't know, orange goo, or are they dead? Or are they alive in that hallway?
oh, they're dead.
Are they dead?
They're dead. Yeah, they're
There's
dead.
a youngling in there too. I mean, and
So
I think
that youngling specifically is they were able. So okay, when see or episode 5 when they show the younglings a little more that were with Riva, he's one of those. Like he's one of those like 5 younglings. He dead. He got murdered by Anakin dead.
yeah, and then you have kind of, any type of Disney product when they have something like that, you can zoom in and start speculating as to who's who. And I know there's a particular Jedi Master from, I think it's Clone Wars or Rebels, that was in there that
Yeah.
was predominantly
Yeah.
shown.
Well, it's from Clone Wars. He's predominantly the Jedi known for taking like Padawans on their first adventure to Ilum to get their crystals, and when it's not Yoda, at least that's typically what it is. He's 100% dead. There's no way that they're still alive in that. It's not carbonite or anything else. They dead.
It could be. You never know. And that's I think a portion of what I don't like about how they approach Star Wars is that they set up these loose ends intentionally, and if they fail to answer them, they just kind of move on. And is that a thing where it's like, oh, they break them all free and that's the beginning of the new wave of Jedi, and they were really out there all the time and the whole time and blah blah blah. I do know that after the fall of the Empire, after Episode 6, Vader's castle is raided, right? You said, and
Yeah.
as well as the
I mean,
Inquisitor
we also
planet.
see that in Rise of Skywalker. Kylo is like going to what used to be Vader's castle because it's destroyed at that point to get the little holocron that he uses to do the hyperspace jumping.
You mean the Disney product that you can buy at Galaxy's Edge for $39.99? Those things are kind of stupid. I mean, I am fascinated with the dark crystal. I'd love to have a black crystal from Galaxy's Edge, but they're all in favor of those holocrons.
Yeah, that thing.
Yeah, so I mean, going and keeping along with the discussion so that we can wrap it up here, because this has been a little bit long. Most recent episode of Obi-Wan, pretty epic. You get a lot of Vader Force usage. You get a lot of epic Vader moments. A little bit of trickery with the ship, kind of pulling a Chewbacca move from what was it? Was it the Rise of Skywalker? I think it was.
Well, it's not even a Chewbacca move. It was the First Order pulling that one.
Yeah.
What you're thinking of, yeah.
I mean, it's just you get there's just that scene where it's the sleight of hand. A little bit lame. We had discussed off the show is. I feel that it could have been utilized as a means of having Obi-Wan tap in a little bit more to his power. Like maybe he's hanging off the side of the ship while it's trying to get away, and he's force fighting Vader, or maybe pushes him away long enough or is able to muster up the force enough to push him away and allow the ship to get away. But they opted for the Vader destroys things and the ship squeezes away, which
regardless, cool. It's an amazing scene.
Yeah.
Vader just being completely brutal with the Force, him completely dominating Reva in every aspect that she tries to pull on him. He's miles ahead in Force usage, lightsaber usage, everything. I mean, I think you were just about to say how that. I mean, we both talked about this in the past or off the podcast. That second ship, we didn't notice the first time, and it's like dimly lit, kind of back in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think it's meant to be that way, so it's a surprise to us when we see that second ship just zoom out real quick, right?
Yeah, I mean it's it's still the concept behind it is the sleight of hand type thing. I just think that it could have been used story wise just a little bit more effectively, but
Yeah.
what you got was pretty sick, and that was what their aim was. They wanted to show off Vader doing a little bit more crazy shit. So
Yeah, but
yeah,
I think another point to that is, I mean, 100% that was Obi-Wan thinking ahead, knowing that Anakin, his old Padawan, now Vader, was gonna do something really brash. And the first thing that happened, and then would be either distracted or disappointed or not able to like realize exactly what was happening until it was too late, which is exactly what happened. So I think that is also pointing to what Obi-Wan was saying earlier in the show, or in that same episode where he's like, "Hey, you don't always have to fight."
yeah.
And I mean, that's the Jedi way.
Well, even going back to their relationship, don't let emotions blind you, that type
Yep,
of
and
thing.
that's
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean,
Yep.
I get it. There's obvious. I mean, I'm just saying that for all that to happen and then see the other ship go off, it's like, oh, never mind. I thought I was like, oh, and now they're gonna have to like really figure this situation out. They're stranded.
When that first happened, I felt like, okay, this is where we're gonna get an epic duel between Obi-Wan and Vader, and I'm 99% sure we're gonna get that in the next episode.
Well, you got
Because I
it.
mean, in all of the campaigning leading up to this, there's like, there's going to be an epic duel between Obi-Wan and Vader again, and it's going to be this rematch. And I don't think episode 3 is that. I think that is Vader toying with his food, then gets interrupted.
Oh yeah. I mean everything about that was clean, and like we had
Yeah.
discussed before, the way they're handling Vader is relatively decent. I think that it is kind of giving off that strong boogeyman vibe, and even Rogue One managed to do it pretty well. That scene is pretty sick.
Yeah.
It was intentional, obviously. I mean that was their goal. It wasn't just a byproduct of a cool character being in a cool scene. It was like fabricated, just like the Luke scene in Mandalorian. It's fabricated to give you that feeling. That wasn't the case when they were making Star Wars originally. Those were just
Mm-hmm.
it was just how it came off. That was the feeling that people got because of how cool it was. Now it's like they know that they have a certain level of coolness that they got to keep up with, and they're doing their best to deliver. And the Vader stuff is definitely cool. And I go as far
Yeah.
to say the Luke stuff is pretty cool too. Even though I am the more cynical of the two, who would much prefer that just a completely different storyline detached from the Skywalker saga. We're done with it. We're off in the old Republic or just the Republic, and we're dealing with new characters and more political stuff again back in the 90s and the early 2000s, and
Yeah.
we can get
And
back into that.
going into that, I mean, just this week we've seen Taika Waititi say that he's wanting to completely separate from existing Star Wars material for his movie, and I appreciate that wholly. We both. I mean, I think you agree with that.
I think like
Having that fresh expansion of Star Wars wherever he takes it, if it's in the future or if it's in the past, doesn't matter. I think it's going to be really good.
I think it's good if Disney backs them up and continues the pattern. Like if not, then it's
Yeah.
just going to be a flash in the pan, and that's it. It was a one-off story told by a quirky director, and it's bound to be weird. It's going to be different. And I'm sure it's going to cause a lot of issues in the fandom with the tone that it delivers.
But
He's
you
a good
know
writer.
what?
I like his directing.
Oh
I
yeah.
like everything about Taika Waititi, but as a Star Wars director, I mean,
I think
the closer
though.
you are to George, the better, and the further away from you get, the more risk you run of detaching fans from what they know and love from the franchise.
Yes and no. I think like they were trying to be serious about it. They were trying to do it their own way and like try to do Star Wars, that serious tone. And I don't think Taika's going to do that. I think it's going to be a different feeling completely. It's going to be a different ballpark. It's going to be a different thing away from the Skywalkers, and I think that's going to be a fresh take on what Star Wars can be, and I'm looking forward to what he has in store for us,
Have you seen What We Do in the Shadows?
No, I have not.
That is hilarious. It's his vampire movie of basically it's just like like a documentary, a faux documentary, where it's a camera crew is following this group of vampires, and they're just existing in current day, the current day environment and world, and
Hmm.
it's Taika Waititi is one of them, and then he directed it and wrote it, and it's a very witty and funny movie. So I definitely recommend it. I think it's not gory. I mean, there's a little gore, but it's comedic
I'll
in
have to
that
check it
sense.
out.
It might even be like a good, like, watch with a chick film. Uh, Very witty, very funny, situational humor, very Office like in how it's delivered. Office, Parks and Rec, that type.
Yeah, I'll have to
Hilarious.
check it out.
Yeah. So yeah, I think overall, I think we're both pretty stoked on where it's going. I'm a little bit more cautious, and we're talking about just the Star Wars franchise in general, but a little bit more
Hmm.
cautious and cynical than you. I know that you gobble this stuff up a little bit easier than I do. Me, I'm a little bit more. I have a certain idea of where they should have gone with it when they took charge of the IP, and
Yep.
instead they're kind of relying on what they know people would want. And I'm here for
Yeah.
it.
Well,
But
and I think I'm definitely not someone that gobbles everything up because I have a lot of problems with the sequels, but I really like what they're doing with Disney Plus and for that matter, the standalone movies that they've come out. I love Rogue One and I love Solo. Um,
do what now?
and what
Yeah, I don't know about
you heard
Solo.
me?
I don't know about Solo. We'll have a discussion on that one day, but
Okay,
I don't know about Solo.
but I really appreciate that, especially now the attention to detail in the Disney Plus stuff. I mean, John and Dave, I truly feel like between the two of them, they are the best thing that we could have had other than George doing it himself. I think they're gonna do wondrous things, and I just hope that Kathleen Kennedy and everyone else at Lucasfilm can truly give them the space that they need to go places with it.
Mhm.
I think they're not. I think Kathleen Kennedy is a smart person in the sense that she's gone up the ladder. She did work with George a lot, and I think she recognizes the talent that she has in those two people and won't let them go. That
My personal opinion about it is Kathleen Kennedy should just probably be removed from Star Wars completely,
I
and
don't
Dave
disagree.
Filoni should take her position. And if he wants to get involved with projects and be the lead, so be it. But I would much prefer him being in a shot caller position and regulating the quality that's getting put out, because right now it is all over the place. It is
Yeah,
so all over the place.
and I don't disagree with that.
And that's just
I
from a
think.
business perspective. That has nothing to do
Oh
with
yeah, yeah.
her or anything that she said or
No,
done or
and
anything. It's just like there's some decisions being made that I'm not a big fan of, and ultimately she's the one responsible. And Dave
yeah.
Filoni is the more capable of the people that could carry the torch, and he should be the
Well,
one that's making the ultimate decisions for everything.
and I think from the business point of view, I think John would be a better fit for that,
Maybe.
and Dave is much better on the creative side. Um,
I don't know. I just think the creative aspect of it is the more important aspect of it. It's like
well,
Favreau is good at
I'm,
writing and keeping a story going and telling a very personal story that you can get attached
yeah,
to. But Filoni understands Star Wars and like everything about Star Wars. He's a nerd, like he's a nerd to the core. And if he wasn't involved with Lucas films, he would still be an absolute nerd for this stuff. And that's the type of
a
person that I want in
hundred
charge,
percent.
not just making the films, but also like making the decisions about the tone of everything and what people should be allowed to get away with the property.
And agreed, but I think he should be the creative director, where he is the end all be all, like George was with the other content that was coming out. I think that someone else on the business side should take place of Kathleen, like John, or I mean, there's other going to be people that are going to be qualified to take that position. That is going to give Dave and people like Taika and the other people that are putting like their heart and soul into Star Wars, the room that they need to do it.
Yeah.
That's what I want. I just want the people that we trust right now, which is Dave and John. I want them to be able to have the room that they need to make Star Wars the best that it can be.
Mm-hmm. I think the overall point is that nerds should be in charge of Star Wars.
100% nerds to begin with, nerds to end.
Yeah, and I think that's a good place to finish this show. We did not talk about everything we could possibly talk about. I'm sure that we can discuss more of this in the future. I think we should come back and talk more about Clone Wars and Rebels, the impact that they
Heck yeah.
have, a little bit more deep dive into the prequels and the original trilogy. I didn't watch the original trilogy again because I've seen them so many times that I was pretty confident in my opinion on them. But I
Oh,
do have some more content to watch myself, and I'm sure I'll have more questions. And like we said in the beginning of the show, this is just the opinions of two nerds sitting down and chatting. We're going to be doing
agreed.
this every week, and we're going to be uploading it. And people can chat in the comments if it's on YouTube, and if it's on iTunes or Spotify or what have you. There's other ways to get involved with the conversation, but we don't take this very seriously. Obviously, we love these properties, or we wouldn't be spending hours on a weekend talking about them. And we do appreciate all the work that these people put into it, even though we might not be 100% agreeing on every decision that they make. We're still
Yeah,
appreciative of a world with Star Wars. Uh,
agreed. And I mean, just to plug on that, I mean, I harp on the sequels a lot. I harp on a lot of Star Wars because I love it. I'm super grateful that we have Star Wars being created not just in animation anymore. Like we have it
mhm.
in live action, we have it in cartoon form via the Bad Batch right now. This is a really good time for Star Wars, and it wouldn't have been possible without the people that are creating it. And I'm really grateful for that. They're doing a good job right now with the Disney Plus stuff. And
Our cup runneth over.
yes,
So we want to say thank you to everybody that stopped by and sat with us for this couple hours or so of chit chat about Star Wars. We do have a couple plugs that we want to squeeze in here, but you can find this show on pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. We do have a Patreon set up. It's not a little, it's a little bit presumptuous. Let's be real, but it's a matter of us having extra content that we can edit and have set aside for people that want to support the show. So you can always head over there. All of our handles are Nerd Chatter Show at Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Patreon, all that good stuff. Links in the description of the YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. If not, you can head over to our official website at nerdchatter.com. And yeah.
yeah. Next week we're going to focus on Marvel,
Mhm.
which we're going to swap roles a lot on that one. You're a lot more familiar with Marvel than I am. I mean,
Mhm.
I've seen all of the MCU movies. I've seen the Disney Plus content for that, but I really never got into the comics, so
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to see what you have to say on that. But
And I was just a
yeah,
90s kid who liked the cartoons, liked the video games, liked the toys, liked the trading cards, liked the comic books, but I was more of the multimedia aspect of it because that was more dominant in the 90s. The 80s
yeah,
was really heavy on the publicized work. But I took in the X-Men cartoon shows and the Spider-Man cartoon shows, and was obsessive over the cards growing up. So that led into my young adulthood being obsessed with the MCU. I was at that Comic Con when they announced the MCU. I was in that room, and I heard the speeches, and was I saw Fahey talking about their intentions on potentially eventually releasing an Avengers, because if you paid attention to the movies that they were considering, that you could naturally come to the conclusion that they were going to lead to a bigger story. And we got what we got. So there's a lot to talk about in regards to the Marvel universe. I am a fan, and treacherous territory with this. And let's be real, the DC and the Marvel fighting is insane. The inner conflict between DC fans of who's making what and which Marvel movies are trash compared to the others. You
yep,
can just like movies and watch them and enjoy them for what they are, and appreciate the fact that we live in a world where our culture is being just completely dominating, in regards to media and the content that people are getting. It's like we run the world now, so we should all be appreciative, because before Marvel, it was pretty low key. Everybody that was into it was just a comic book fan. Marvel and DC were just two different things that you enjoyed equally, and
yep.
that's how we're going to hopefully deliver it. And we don't want the discourse around those conversations to be hostile. And we'll take the necessary measures to make sure that everything is chill. Another thing that you can also check out is we do have a Discord. The free segment or the free game segment at the beginning of the show. Those are just links that we're posting in the channel and the Discord, and you can always check that out and pick them up when we post them, when we run across them. The little segment in the beginning of the show is just for anybody that doesn't have access. After we get through these catch-up segments of Marvel, DC, Star Wars, maybe Harry Potter, we'll get into what the show really is, which is a multi-segment show where we dedicate 15, 20 minutes at a time to a particular segment, whether it be comic book movies, video game releases, trailers, speculations, what ifs, just topics that we run across when we have to scrounge every week for things to talk about. Right now,
yeah.
we have a lot to catch up on. So
yeah, with that, we're not going to shy away from hard topics. Like we've been talking about a lot about the Johnny Depp stuff, and I mean the racism that happened with Moses Ingram, and that's going to be something that we're going to be talking about.
Yep, those are topics that get a little dodgy, but again, just two guys sitting around chit chatting. And
100%,
and just sharing our opinions, not intended to sway the opinion of anybody else or inject our opinion into somebody who might not be 100% clear. It's just commenting on things that are going on out there. So that is pretty much it. Again, all of our socials at Nerd Show or Nerd Chatter Show, and then the website nerdchatter.com if you want a little more details, and check out our Patreon as well as our Discord.
Thank you everyone again for joining us, and we hope to see you next week.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a good one.